One, it's 9:15, and let's rise, and Senator Sullivan will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before I open the hearing, you should know that it's going to be some of our members here go back and forth because they have to testify over at the Granite Place. So they're not going to be here, but they'll be here later on. So pretty soon Senator Sullivan will leave to go over there. So I think Senator Prentice and I will be the two permanent members today. So that's it. Okay. Let's open the hearing to the Senate Education Committee on House Bill 112. And we have the prime sponsor, Representative Moffett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for being here all the way from Sullivan County. For those watching across the world on YouTube, it's snowing hard here in New Hampshire. So for the record, my name is Mike Moffett, State Representative for Merrimack District 4, which is Canterbury and Loudon. So to get right to this, several terms ago, we did pass HB 320, which required every high school graduate in New Hampshire to pass the 128-question naturalization exam. Had bipartisan sponsorship and support, sailed through both houses. Representative Shaw was a co-sponsor, the late Representative Shaw. Governor even had a signing ceremony. In the material I handed out earlier, there's a picture of us with a wonderful signing ceremony with Governor Sununu. My mom is in that picture, FYI, she'll soon be 96. So anyway, this bill, HB 112, is a sister measure to the high school requirement, requires all graduates from public colleges to also pass the test. Students who've passed the high school test are exempt. This bill simply covers some gaps regarding out-of-state students or older students so that all our public college grads have the same universality of civics achievement that high school students currently do. So I spent 20 years in the community college system after earlier having spent 12 years in the university system. And I join all those who are very troubled by how ignorant, I don't know what the other term could be, of so many of our college graduates with regard to government and history. Countless anecdotal examples. I have many, and I won't get into them here, and plenty of research also bears this out. So this civics test is not a panacea that will by itself solve the knowledge crisis. Some of us think it's a crisis. We have so many people graduating from college who have no idea how government works. But the test, and by the way, there are other tools besides this assessment. Just today is the Ever Alert. Senator Sullivan's already noticed. There's a cover story, front page story in today's Union Leader about civics essays. A young man from Bishop Brady, recognized by the Supreme Court Chief Justice. And so that's another way to raise awareness and knowledge about civics is that essay contest. So there's different pieces to this. Unfortunately, there are folks that are averse to assessments and accountability. They're out there. I mean, I've spent 32 years in post-secondary education, and some of those folks have, in the past and probably today and currently, have worked hard to kind of muddy the waters and forestall this meaningful reform. So I think it should be understood that this very modest requirement, in our view, the sponsors and supporters, increases the value of a New Hampshire college degree, and it increases support for post-secondary education, in our view. So in the past, we were told this test would set a precedent that other states don't have this requirement. It's not true. Numerous other states have this requirement. I could list them. In fact, when on the House side, they looked into this, researched it, and many other states have this requirement. So the notion which came up before that this should be unique is just not true. Even elite private universities, Purdue University is a good example. They require every Purdue grad to pass a civics assessment. It increases the value of a degree from Purdue University. That's what we'd like to see in New Hampshire as well. So we have also been told that it's not our business in the legislature to require an assessment such as this. Well, actually, obviously, some of us think it is very much the people's business, the legislature's business, to support knowledge acquisition at our state schools. This is Education Committee. So for others to suggest otherwise underscores a lack of civics knowledge on their part. Our Constitution gives the governor veto power. It doesn't give post-secondary education a veto over what the people or the people's legislature think is important. And I have to speak to the cost. Now, this came before us before, several terms ago, had no fiscal note. This has a fiscal note. In our view, sponsors and supporters, you shouldn't even have a fiscal note. So I went to OLS and I said, where did you get these outrageous numbers in this fiscal note? And they said, well, they simply asked post-secondary what it would cost. So according to the fiscal note, UNH would have to spend $130,000 to hire somebody to give the test. Plymouth would have to hire somebody at $130,000 to give the test. Keene would have to hire somebody at $130,000 to give the test. So my question is, how is it that every high school in the state now gives this test, large and small schools, without having to spend $130,000 to hire somebody to give the test? So I think what happened there, and I think it's important that we shine a light on this, because if there are folks who don't want this assessment, when OLS goes to them in good faith and say, what will it cost? They have to trust post-secondary to give them reasonable, good numbers, not try to say this will cost $500,000 or $1 million to give a test. Some see it as a poison pill because they don't want this assessment. So again, I spent 32 years in post-secondary education. I gave countless online assessments, exercises, quizzes, you name it. I would enter them, and the students automatically are in my class. And they, at their leisure, they could log on, take the assessments, automatically corrected. Nobody has to correct it once it's entered online, much less hire somebody to $130,000 to correct it. And we have admissions offices, we have registrar offices. That's their job to review transfer credit, online credit. And it's their job to document related competencies. Now, as I said, we've already passed this once. 3 years ago, it was then HB 319, College Civics. It was, again, another bipartisan sister measure to the aforementioned 320, and you have the picture of the signing ceremony of the governor. But when HB 319 reached the Senate several years ago, folks from wherever muddied the waters with scare tactics, and it was re-referred in this committee. One of the concerns was, well, if we have a civics assessment, people won't want to come to New Hampshire colleges. Well, we utterly reject that argument. We think it was a scare tactic. I would submit that if there's like one student from Massachusetts who doesn't come here because they have to take an assessment that middle schoolers take and pass, then we maybe don't need that student, if there are any at all, which I really doubt. I think that was a red herring, but it spooked people. That and other misinformation spooked people. So this committee re-referred it. And then I have to say that I appreciate the fact that the folks on this committee years ago, Senator, you and I met, I don't know if you remember, in the cafeteria, and we spoke about the misinformation that spooked people. I spoke with Senator Hennessy in the same fashion, Senator Ricciardi in the same fashion, and they didn't have the post-secondary background that some of us did. They said, this is not true, this is a scare tactic. And so finally, it was special ordered and passed. Senator Guyder gave a wonderful speech, passed, went to the governor, and we thought we were good. By the way, quickly, Senator D'Alessandro and I were both civics teachers in earlier lives, and he and I worked together on earlier civics legislation, but his focus was on classroom component, which I shared, and I worked with him on that. But a classroom component by itself is not the total answer. Many classes don't focus on the fundamentals. You know, they focus on activism or climate change or whatever. And that's why we need an assessment to augment the classroom instruction. Lou was a coach. In fact, Senator D'Alessandro recruited me to play basketball for him back in the 70s, before most of you were born. So he and I go way back, and I wanted to say to Senator D'Alessandro, I said, Coach, I didn't get a chance to do this. I said, Coach, would you send players out to play without knowing the fundamentals? And of course, if you're going to be good at anything, you need the fundamentals. And this assessment helps to get fundamentals. So before I conclude, I do need to speak to Governor Sununu's 2020 veto. Elephant in the room. So after the Senate, after you all sent the HB 319 to the governor's desk, we went to celebrate the sponsors, and we thought we were all set. We got a message from the governor's office, I did, and wanted to meet. I said, well, this may not be so great. Love to have the governor call, but, so we scheduled a meeting, and it had to be rescheduled. Set up another meeting, sponsors and supporters of the governor, to talk about these questions that came up about civics test. Had to be rescheduled. Finally, at this time, Senator Lang, or then Representative Lang, and I finally got a meeting with the governor. And we had a wonderful meeting. And he went through all these things that he'd heard, and we said, no, that's not true, that's not true, no, it won't cost anything, not, you know. So he'd been spooked by all this misinformation that came out. So we had a great meeting, thought we were all set. In fact, the next day, and I sent you a picture of this, the governor made a tweet of him and myself and Representative Lang thanking us for coming in to talk. Oh, man, that is so great. Great talk with the governor, answered all his questions, we're all set. And then we found out there's a veto, and we were stunned, dumbfounded. So months later, I ran into the staffer who was in the room with us, and I asked him about it. I said, I thought we were all set with that bill. And he said, I can tell you now that because we had to reschedule the meeting several times, the enrollment clock had run out that morning. The governor had to make a decision. He, based on the information he had before we met with him, he vetoed it. So I think the tweet he sent out, which I gave you a copy, I think, just my opinion, that was his way of saying, hey, sorry, you know, if we could have met when we originally scheduled, you could have answered my questions, I would have signed it. That's my opinion. I'm not strictly my opinion. So anyway, thank you for your time. And I hope, of course, the committee will support knowledge acquisition, accountability in this wonderful civics assessment to enhance the value of college degrees here in New Hampshire. And I'd be happy to try to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Chair Ward. Thank you, Representative Moffett. And this would not be inconsistent with questions I've asked related to this in the past. Those with, say, a 504 plans, you know, documented learning disabilities, that the plans go with them to college for, you know, say, extra time accommodations, et cetera. How is that? I don't see that captured in here, so maybe I'm missing something. Can you take me there?
Thanks, that's a great question. And the language that we passed into law in 2021-22 with HB 320 specifically, on the high school level, specifically said that institutions or students with IEPs or special, a need for special accommodations could be accommodated for within the institution. On the post-secondary level, that, and you make a good point, they don't have IEPs per se in colleges, but there are the 504 issues that perhaps could or be needed to be addressed. But I also have to say, some people in the House side said this is the exact same version of 319 that the governor didn't support. It's not. It's been amended. And to your point, I think it's very important to understand that the language in this bill that just came to you does allow for an option for some students to not take the exam if they can document that they took a class that covered this information on the college level, or if there was some other assessment approach in the college level that would satisfy the requirements. So please understand that there is, in the language in this measure, a non-assessment option available.
Can I do a follow-up? Follow-up? Thank you. So Representative Moffett, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that, so you're right, that 504 does follow to college, an IEP. It's built out of an IEP, but a 504 can follow to college. And one of the things can be extra time, which we both recognized. But what you're saying is that, well, maybe what you're saying is that that might not need to be memorialized or documented in here because there are other assessment alternatives that one of those students could turn to instead of that?
Yes, so on the House side, as I said, they did change the language from the original language, which required the universality of an assessment, to offer a way to satisfy the requirement without doing an assessment. The 504 piece of it, if the Senate thought it needed to clarify that option beyond what's already in the measure, there would certainly be something you could do to address that concern if it still remains after you look at this in its totality.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Altshuler?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. So over the past, 8 legislative sessions that I've participated in budget issues, we have consistently asked the college system to do more with less. And this requires not just UNH, but Plymouth and Keene and all of the community college systems to adopt a new system of administering a test, developing a curriculum, hiring staff to teach it, and then tracking who's taken the test, who might have taken something at their high school if they're a New Hampshire student, and who would be exempt. It's not a small ask. I've read through this already and talked to a few stakeholders. It's not a small ask. So I'm wondering why you have asserted that the financial fiscal note is out of bounds. Like you don't think that this is a realistic look of how to implement a new program that we would be requiring the college system to implement while we're not providing funding for it to happen?
Sure, thank you for that, Senator. You mentioned curriculum development. No, there's no need. The sponsors and supporters, myself, see no need for any curriculum development unless the colleges wanted to do that. This is not about a new course unless the colleges wanted to do that. It's simply about making an assessment available as we see it online. And I mentioned this before. This is why the supporters and sponsors had such a problem with this new fiscal note that the previous measure did not have at all. I'm very sensitive. I spent 32 years in post-secondary education, and I'm very sensitive to not putting extra requirements or requiring extra spending on post-secondary. And in the mind of the supporters, this really does not do that. As I said earlier, the questions are all out there. They're in the public domain. The high schools have been doing this. And so to have an online version, and the reason I say this is because, as I earlier stated, I personally know, because I've done it so many times, how easy it is, because of having done it, to put an assessment online, and then when a student is entered into a group or a class, then they automatically can access the test and take it whenever they want. So I don't see this at all as an imposition of new requirements in terms of hiring anybody, of spending a whole lot of time. I see it as a minimal intrusion, and so I'm sensitive to your concerns, and I really think that they're overwrought.
May I follow up, Madam Chair? Thank you. So by statute, we have each of the community colleges, the community college system, and our our colleges, UNH, Plymouth, Keene, have autonomy in developing their curriculum. And so adding this means it was, even in the best case scenario of adding a digital test to somebody else's class, because it has to go into some curriculum. It's got to go somewhere. It's got to be put online. It's got to be accessed. And 50% of our students, because we don't have great financial aid, so we have to depend on out-of-state students to float our university. They don't have this requirement necessarily. Our international students certainly don't. Students coming from outside of New Hampshire certainly don't. So someone's got to teach this. It's got to be taught, and it has to be under somebody's curriculum. So, and then additionally, because we have these autonomous institutions, how do you propose, is your proposal that we just force them to accept this curriculum and develop it and put it under someone's class, it's got to go into some department, like it has to be administered, unless you're suggesting that it be administered by the bursar's office in order to complete, have that checklist done so they can get their degree. So where do you envision envision this actually living in a curriculum in a department?
Again, thank you for that, Senator. As I said earlier, I do not see this as involving a curriculum requirement. You used the word taught. I don't see a need to teach this information. There's 128 questions that are in the public domain. It's online. I see no need to teach anything as far as the assessment goes. Now, there are classes, college classes in government history, whatever, civics, that are out there already. I see no need for a new course. And you mentioned autonomy, and I'm sensitive to that, but I have to say that the post-secondary USNH, CCSNH are largely autonomous, but should they be completely autonomous? As I said earlier, do they have a right to veto what the people want? This passed overwhelmingly in the House with some bipartisan support. Has it passed before? We've been down this road before. And I have to also say that contrary to what has come up in the past, this is in effect all over the country in terms of states that require this already. If this was, and this came up years ago when we first brought this up, nobody else is doing it. Well, yes, as I said earlier, other states are doing this. So the due diligence is out there, has been done. It seems to be working very well. There's no state that I'm aware of that has put this in and is retracted it. Again, I see it as a relatively very simple but incredibly meaningful gesture or approach to address the lack of civics knowledge. And it's not my job to ask questions, but rhetorically, I would say, are we okay? Are you okay with all the people that I've seen that statistics and research shows don't know how government works? That is scary. And again, to the autonomy piece of it, and Governor Sununu mentioned this when we had our little meeting. He says, what if some future legislature wants to require CRT or you name it? Well, if some future legislature in their wisdom wants to make a requirement, that's up to some future legislature. It doesn't concern us. As I said before, there's two things I think that we should expect every college graduate to be able to do. They need to be able to speak English if they're going to graduate and write in English, and that is in place. It's a universal composition requirement. When I was at Plymouth, there was also a math requirement that was in place. And so to have a very simple civics requirement, I think is crucial. I'm not okay with people who don't have a clue how government works. They say, we need a law. And they want to say, for whatever their activism calls them to do, we need change, we need a law. Well, how does a law come about? Well, I don't know, but we need a new law. So I think the ignorance crisis, that's what many of us see, rates action. And I think this is very minimal and not intrusive in my view.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative. Nice to see you. So could I go online right now and take this test for free?
Yes, as I said several times, it's in the public domain. Every high school gives it. There are many versions. And people do take it. In fact, people come to me. There's a state rep who his spouse was a naturalized citizen, and when they had their wedding, they had part of their wedding ceremony. They had questions from this test that they had at the ceremony. So yes, you could take it online. Yes, it's been suggested that we legislators should take this exam. I'm okay with that. That's would be a different law. But yes, it's easily accessible online, and you can take it online. And if you haven't already, I say, my niece just graduated from Concord High School. She got 126 out of 128. And this common high school requirement it's a universality issue. Every grad has something in common now as a high school grad in New Hampshire. And they don't have to take this in college. They've already done it. So the people in college who would take it would be older students. Why should they not have to know this basic fundamental civics knowledge? Or out-of-staters, if they come from a state that doesn't have this requirement. I was a teacher. I'm an educator. I believe in learning and pedagogy and knowledge. I think this is important material.
Follow up? Don't you think this is the bare minimum that we should be teaching on civics? I mean, I've seen the videos that you've seen, the reels, and I've got two kids that are in college right now, and one goes to a college locally, and he was stunned by the lack of civics that people were aware of. The first day he came home and said, kids in my class that have graduated high school don't know the difference between Abraham Lincoln and Ben Franklin. And so, don't you think this is the bare minimum for civics education that we should be expecting of college students?
Yes, I completely agree. I think this is a very minimal expectation to augment other approaches. I'm horrified by the lack of knowledge that too many people have. And this is, I think, a very easy way to do something about it that'll make a big difference. I served on education committee several terms, and so much of it, and this is in the handout I gave to the committee, so much of what education committees do have nothing to do with learning. They have to do with vending machines, or you name it. There's 100 bills in House Education last term. How many of them had much to do with learning stuff or pedagogy? Very few. This one does. If we pass this, then a whole lot of people are going to get smarter, or at least more knowledgeable, if not smarter, if we pass this. If it doesn't move forward, if it gets stymied like it did the last time, then a whole lot of learning and knowledge that would have been acquired won't be. And that, I think, would be too bad.
Thank you. I apologize, Madam Chair. I have to scoot.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Kathy Provencher? Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Excuse me, members of the committee. My name is Catherine Provencher. I serve as the chancellor of our state's university system, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning about House Bill 112. We very much appreciate the sponsors' intent of this legislation. We take our responsibility to provide our students with learning of civic engagement. The last thing I want to do this morning is muddy the waters or give you any scare tactics. That's some of what Representative Moffett was saying, that I might muddy the waters, and I don't want to do that. The university system is opposed to this legislation for two primary reasons. There is a cost, and I will say the fiscal note reads that it's indeterminable, and we provided a range of between $100,000 and $500,000. Is it $500,000? I don't know, maybe not, but it is not zero. We are doing everything we can to reduce administrative cost. We're consolidating leadership. We're reducing our footprint. We're changing all our business processes. We fully recognize that we must reduce the cost structure because of declining enrollment and because of reductions in state support. So we are leaning into reducing our cost structure. This bill does add an administrative regulatory burden to the work of the university system. I'll talk a little bit more about that. The second reason that we're opposed to the bill, it does set a precedent of the legislature mandating graduation requirements. The statute that are enabling, the university system's enabling legislation, RSA 187A, and I'll quote, "The university system institutions are to operate with the highest measure of autonomy and self-governance." And again, we take that very seriously, and we appreciate the flexibility that that autonomy that's built into the statute provides in building curriculum and setting graduation requirements. Now, I want to get back to cost a little bit. We will need to implement a mechanism to track compliance. There'll need to be some technology implemented related to that. I know the Department of Education, when the law was passed to require high school students to complete the assessment, I think it was over $500,000 in technology and added costs for that. I'm not saying the university system would need that. I'm just saying it's not zero. The other thing is, we would have to put in a very rigorous compliance regimen, because the last thing we want to do is have students who have completed all their curriculum and coursework, they've paid all their tuition and fees, and they haven't taken the test, and so we can't confer the degree. So we would need to ensure that academic advisors and the registrar, everyone's trained on following up with students who haven't taken the exam to make sure we could confer the degree. So none of that happens at zero cost. Would we need a full-time employee at every institution? I don't know that. I don't know that. That was an estimate made in the fiscal note last fall when we wrote the fiscal note. But there would have to be some monitoring, compliance. And again, not all students will need to take the exam. There will be exemptions for some students. Students that attend public high schools in New Hampshire, for example. I think foreign nationals are exempted. Veterans may be exempted. So we'll need to set up a technology that not everyone has to take it, but we need to track those who do in order to be able to confer the degree. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll leave my comments there.
Okay. Do you have a question? I guess we don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mark Rubenstein and Shannon Reed.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Madam Chair, Senator Prentice, Mark Rubenstein, Community College System of New Hampshire.
Shannon Reed, Director of Government Affairs for the Community College System.
This morning, I signed in as neutral on this bill, and it's not an accurate statement. I'm wholly supportive of Representative Moffat's goals for this bill, completely endorse what he's trying to accomplish and ensure that this state has a well-educated citizenry. It's the implementation that causes me to fall to the other side, and it's not an insurmountable hill to climb. Right now, I will say that we're not concerned about this as an entry point, particularly for recent high school graduates who will come to us already having satisfied this requirement. But our students represent a broad cross-section of life, and they enter, they step out, they return. The students that we will have to track to know who needs to be compliant with this legislation will be complicated. So I do share the concerns expressed by Chancellor Provencher that there will be some cost associated with it. As often has happened in our colleges and in our system, those costs tend to be absorbed. Rather than adding another person, it's one more set of responsibilities, and at some point that becomes problematic. Right now, that additional responsibility would be layered on work that we're doing to implement Workforce Pell, work that we're doing to address financial aid fraud, which has become a chronic issue across the country, exacerbated by the use of artificial intelligence and bots, in some cases stolen identification of real individuals, including former students, to try and defraud the federal government of federal financial aid. We're implementing WCAG 2.1, web accessibility for public entities, which is an extremely labor-intensive process. Even some of the instructional materials that we receive from the federal government for some of our programs are in fact not yet compliant, and so trying to work through the complexity of that. Our engagement with Regen Valley, the Army work that's occurring in the mill yard, more recently our role with rural healthcare transformation as part of the Governor's Go North. Those are competing priorities that are layered on the shoulders of many of the same people that we would ask to administer this. So we embrace the objective of a well-educated, civically informed citizenry and our role as educators in supporting that. What we're looking for is some assistance in the implementation that would give us both time and some additional latitude to accomplish this effectively. And I'll defer to my colleague for details.
Thank you. If the committee is leaning toward passing this bill, there are a couple amendments that we would ask you to consider that we think would make implementation or could make implementation a little less burdensome and complex for our staff. The first one is very simple. It's simply to make clear that this bill would apply to degree-seeking students only, not those who come to us for short-term credentials like our 8-week microelectronics boot camps, our short-term workforce offerings that really are designed to convey skills very quickly and have students get out into the workforce. This could be done very easily by adding on line 20 of the bill the words with an associate degree. So it's clear that that's the population of students that we're talking about that would be covered by this requirement. The second change is to allow us to block exempt all students who graduated from a New Hampshire high school from January 1, 2026 or later, on the premise that they are already required under New Hampshire law to have passed this test in order to graduate from high school. So basically, if we can determine that the student is a New Hampshire high school graduate who graduated after that date, we could code them as having complied rather than handle this requirement person by person. We would still have to handle the exempted groups, probably individually. So veterans, active duty military, other exempt students that are listed in the bill would still have to come in and show us proof of their status, and we would somehow code them in our system as having, as being exempt. We would also look at, whether we could ask applicants to self-certify on applications, a number of different mechanisms to somehow get this information into our system so that we don't have to individually track every student who's subject to this, this bill. We don't know whether homeschool students or those with a GED will have taken the test as the part of the high school requirement, so that's something that would need to be explored. And if not, then we would need to put them in the pool of those we'd have to individually verify. So what I just outlined can be done by adding a new Roman numeral 3 at the end of the bill and just before the effective date. And I have drafted that language if it would be helpful for you to see. I think it's important to understand how this test is taken in the real world. It's taken in person. The examiner meets with the applicant for citizenship, and of the 128 questions on the test, chooses any 10 and asks the person in person to answer 6 of the 10 correctly. It's because the test itself is not really set up as a simple true, false, or multiple choice kind of test. There are some nuances that are allowed in how the answers are given. So for us to implement this test according to the bill, it would be necessary to kind of convert all of those questions into true, false, multiple choice, something that could be easily taken online and scored online. And that is in fact how the Department of Education approached it when they had to answer this mandate when the bill was passed a few years ago that the sponsor was talking about. The initial implementation costs for the department were about $500,000 plus other internal work, because they contracted with an outside vendor to do that work, create the test, and make sure that it is
that it can be taken online by every student in high school. After that initial implementation, the Department of Education did go back to the Governor and Council with an $800,000 contract to continue to administer this requirement for the next 5 years. So as has been said by speakers before me, this does have costs one way or the other, whether we take it internally as additional workload or additional compensated hours, or work with a vendor. We have received that format of the test from the Department of Education. They were able to share that with us. So we currently have it in the form that can be taken online. So at that point, all we would need to do is kind of update the questions that change from year to year, because some of those would. But the concern we have is really more in the interface between taking the test in our learning management system. We have to write some kind of a script or an API to get the completion record over to our registrar's office, code the students who are exempt, track down the students. If it's 2 weeks before graduation and we have a handful of students who haven't taken that test, we do not want to be in a position where we have to say to them, sorry, you can't walk, you can't graduate until you do this. Senator Prentice, you had asked about alternative ways of taking the test. And as I read the bill, the other assessment alternative is a course, a civics course that the student could take. I don't know how much that helps the kind of students you're talking about, and I'm not sure the feasibility of adding an entire course to a student's educational pathway if they're in for a nursing degree or an EMT degree or some other program. Adding an entire course may not be a very feasible option. So, the sponsor mentioned that other universities and colleges do offer this requirement, and Purdue was cited. I wish we had Purdue's resources to implement this kind of requirement. As the chancellor described, we 100% understand the intent behind it. Our concerns are implementation, and thought it was only fair that we outline that to you as you consider this bill.
Question? You mentioned that you like the goal, but the implementation is the thing that is the problem. And you mentioned some of the things that we could do to make the implementation easier. Do you have it written down someplace? Okay, then I would like to have it so we can share it with the rest of the members. So that would be good. I don't have any questions, so you're all set. Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience who wants to chime in on this bill? HB 112? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on HB 112. And we'll move on to HB 1571. And the prime sponsor is Representative Noble.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Senator Prentice. For the record, I'm Kristen Noble, and I represent Hillsborough District 2, the town of Bedford. So this bill would direct the Department of Education to revise the academic standards for math, English, and science, beginning in June, we changed the date, 2027. And then every 10 years thereafter, they would review the standards for possible revisions. It would also require a new state assessment to be developed to align to the new standards. And it also directs the department to provide a recommended list of high-quality instructional materials that would best align to the new academic standards. And school districts may choose from that list, but they don't need to. So it does have a decent-sized fiscal note, which is why it was pushed off until the next biennium, the next budget. I was hoping that we would be able to start on this work this year because it will be a lengthy process, but I think there's just no money for that right now. But I do see this as critical to the success of New Hampshire students.
this bill did originate with me because I am focused on getting rid of the math that is aligned to the Common Core standards. So this, my hope is to eliminate the Common Core standards. And that's it.
Okay. Question? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay.
Anne Marie Banfield.
Okay, I do have a copy for everybody, but I'm going to read from one. For the record, Anne Marie Banfield, I'm a parent advocate focused on excellence in education in New Hampshire, and today I do come in support of HB 1571. The academic standards currently used in New Hampshire public schools were adopted approximately 15 years ago. During that same period, during all this time, student achievement nationwide has remained largely stagnant and in some cases declined. After more than 16 years of implementation, Common Core has not produced meaningful or sustained gains in student proficiency across the core academic subjects. So that includes math, English, and science. And while New Hampshire students continue to outperform in many others than in other states, that relative success should not be mistaken for adequacy. The existing standards are not driving improvement, nor are they positioning students to compete at the highest academic levels. This is an area where bipartisan agreement should be possible. Updating and strengthening academic standards, even if it requires an investment of taxpayer dollars, is a legitimate and worthwhile use of public funds. This would make a significant improvement for our public schools. Because I know people who've pulled their kids out because the academics were so poor. History shows, and that really happened 15 years ago, there was a mass exodus. History shows this approach can work. Prior to adopting Common Core, Massachusetts implemented rigorous and content-rich standards. As a result, its students ranked at the top nationally and were competitive with the highest performing students internationally. Strong standards help keep families in public schools by restoring confidence in quality. New Hampshire should pursue the same goal. Students attending public schools deserve the same access to a high-quality education as students enrolled in private or elite institutions. And unfortunately, the current standards, particularly the mathematics, fall short. A few examples illustrate why improvement is necessary. Here are just some of the problems associated with the Common Core math standards, for instance. They delay access to advanced mathematics. Common Core places most students on a trajectory to complete Algebra 1 by 9th grade, rather than 8th grade. While some districts accelerate students despite the standards, many do not. As a result, students in those districts may be unable to complete calculus in high school, limiting their competitiveness for selective STEM programs. This structured delay disproportionately harms public school students, and restricts future academic opportunities for them. So it puts our public school students at a disadvantage to private schools. This is a distinct difference. It mandates the use of multiple and confusing strategies. Common Core math requires instruction in multiple strategies for basic operations such as multiplication and division. There is no pedagogical necessity for this requirement. The traditional algorithms are sufficient and effective and demonstrated by high-performing countries such as Singapore and Japan. Prior to Common Core, strong state standards required mastery of these algorithms while allowing teachers the discretion to introduce alternative methods. Mandating multiple approaches often creates confusion, slows instruction, and increases student frustration, particularly for those struggling academically. So I want you to think about the way you learn to do multiplication and division in school. They introduce multiple other ways to do these basic math problems, And so what happens, and I was a math tutor, so I saw this, is you would have kids learn, this is the way they would do long division, for instance. A little different, it's a little different. And so you're used to the standard algorithm. This is called the box way they do long division. So when they got to polynomial long division in high school, where you have to do something like this, you need to know the standard algorithm. As you can see, it's set up the way that most of us have learned long division. So a lot of these kids who learn these multiple different ways, what happens is they never master this way. They get to high school and the teachers are trying to teach them polynomial long division, and the students aren't ready for it because they haven't mastered the standard algorithm. So that's in multiplication and division. It really puts our students at a disadvantage for students who are just learning the standard algorithm. And as somebody who taught math to students as a tutor, I never would introduce a different way to learn this because I could see the confusion on their face. Once in a blue moon, I might alter that, but really it was something I knew they would pay the price if I started teaching them different ways to do something versus what the standard way is. So I just want to be very clear about that. It really puts our kids in these public schools at a disadvantage. There's an overemphasis on communication at the expense of computation. The math standards place heavy emphasis on explaining reasoning in written form. Again, this is not necessary. Mathematicians who were part of the review process saw the problems with this, and this often prioritizes language skills over mathematical competence. Now, who do you think that harms the most? Manchester students, because we have a lot of students coming in from other countries who don't know the language. So they may be brilliant in mathematics, but if they can't explain their answer, they're marked wrong. And that could be impacting our scores. And there's no reason for that. This disadvantages students who are English learners, students with communication challenges, and students with disabilities such as autism, who may excel at computation but struggle to articulate explanations. Those are the ones that are suffering. Assessment should measure whether a student can do mathematics, not whether they can write about it. Communication skills belong primarily in English language arts, not as a gatekeeper to math proficiency. This concern was articulated by Professor Stephen Wilson, PhD, MIT. Actually, I think he was at Johns Hopkins too. In his critique of the Smarter Balanced Assessment for the Thomas B. Fordham Institute, he wrote, "The consortium focuses on mathematical practices of the Common Core state standards for mathematics at the expense of content, and they outline plans to assess communication skills that have nothing to do with mathematical understanding." That is an MIT math professor saying that. Number 4, I think I have 5 altogether. Number 4, the lack of automaticity in foundation skills. So Dr. James Milgram was on the validation committee for Common Core. He's a mathematician and refused to endorse the final product. He documented significant deficiencies in his paper called Missing, Delayed, or Muddled Topics in the Common Core Math Standards. He notes that Common Core does not require students to achieve automaticity in addition and subtraction, multiplication, or long division. So you don't have to know these off the top of your head in order to score proficient. So you may not know what you should know as you're going through Common Core math. These are foundational algorithms in standard practice in nearly all the high achieving countries. Yet Common Core does not require this for any core mathematical skill, contributing to weak foundations and compounding errors in later grades. So when you get to this, if you don't know your multiplication and your subtraction and your addition off the top of your head, you are at a disadvantage, and that's not what Common Core requires. The admissions by the Common Core's lead author. This was in NPR. Jason Zimba, lead writer of Common Core math standards, publicly acknowledged serious shortcomings. In an NPR interview, he described having to tutor his own children after his elite private school that he placed them in adopted Common Core math, which he characterized as subpar. This is the lead author of the Common Core math standards. More importantly, when asked about whether Common Core prepares students for selective or STEM-focused colleges, he admitted that it does not. In effect, the standards were never designed to prepare students for the very opportunities many families aspire to, once again placing public school students at a disadvantage. These examples represent only a fraction of the documented problems with Common Core standards, assessments, and aligned curricula used in public schools. School administrators routinely invest in new instructional materials as part of a normal budget cycles. If districts spend money regardless, it is both reasonable and responsible to ensure those purchases align with stronger, higher quality standards. The Catholic Diocese did this a few years ago. They sat down and reviewed their academic standards for the Catholic schools and made significant improvements. And I know this because I helped them. So our Catholic schools right now are at a definite advantage over what is happening in our public schools. New Hampshire can do better, and it should. Updating academic standards is not about politics or ideology. It is about quality, equity, and giving public school students a fair chance to succeed. New Hampshire 8th grade math scores peaked in the early 2010s and have declined since. We adopted Common Core in 2010, the State Board of Education. One person on that state board voted against it, John Lyons. Between 2019 and 2024, average scores fell from 287 to 280, with a slight uptick in 2022 to 2024, suggesting a stabilization. The state remains above national average, but below its historic peak. There are numerous flaws in the English language arts standards, as detailed in a report by Dr. Sandra Stotsky, who also served on the validation committee and refused to sign off on the English standards. Those standards, when she developed them in Massachusetts, contributed to Massachusetts students consistently ranking at or near the top nationally on assessments such as the NAEP and performing competitively with students in high-achieving districts, including Singapore jurisdictions. So prior to Common Core, Massachusetts students were finishing #1, but also on international tests, they were comparing, or they were achieving to what Singapore, Japan, those countries were achieving. So it wasn't just nationally, it was internationally. So we do have examples of where states themselves had developed quality standards. Dr. Stotsky later served on the Common Core Validation Committee and ultimately refused to sign off on the standards, citing substantive deficiencies. And I will send this to you as in the email, so you have direct links, but I also included the links here. The next generation science standards were actually considered worse than the Common Core. They were subject to substantial criticism and were regarded by many education experts as weaker than Common Core standards in terms of content, rigor, and coherence. Proven high-quality academic standards already exist and should be used as a benchmark in developing rigorous and effective standards for New Hampshire. Our public schools, teachers, and students deserve it. So for those reasons, I urge you ought to pass on HB 1571.
Thank you. You have a question? So let me just be sure that I understand where you're coming from. This is a bill to ask the DOE to do a 10-year review of standards, and there has been suggested that Common Core should be one of them, and you are objecting to that?
I am supporting that. They
You're-
absolutely need to be revised, they need to be improved, and this bill would take us in that direction, yes.
Okay, so you will provide that written testimony?
Yes, I have it, and I will,
Okay.
I will also send it to you in email, because there's some links on there, and I don't know if you want to type them all in. If you just get it in the email, you just can click on the link.
But when we review, before we do we'd like to go through some of
Sure.
the links that you have been suggested, so.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience who wants to? Yes, Drew Klein.
Hi, good morning, members of the committee, Madam Chairman. I'm Drew Klein. I'm Chairman of the State Board of Education. I did not come initially to comment on this bill. I'm here for another bill, but I thought I'd just give some perspective, neither endorsing the bill or opposing it, just so you guys can understand a little bit. I have one, again, I didn't dive into this bill, so maybe there are easy explanations for this. It says that a Department of Education shall initiate a revision of the standards. The standards is the State Board of Education's purview to write standards. So I maybe would look at clarity on who's going to do that initiation of the review, whether it should be the department or the State Board. If the department does it, it'd be nice to understand how then that follows through to the State Board's responsibilities. The State Board has to adopt standards. So I just seek some clarity there. And it says that the standards shall align with high quality criteria that emphasize rigor, clarity, and relevance. I think that's great. But I might want to just ask you guys to maybe think about how would you measure that, right? So one of the things that we have been looking at on the State Board for a while now, when we start to approach these things, is trying to find research and evidence based on outcomes. And so I think I would agree that the Common Core standards have not lived up to the expectations that we would have hoped for. And we now have, with time, some evidence that those standards are weaker than they were initially thought to be. When we look at adopting standards or teacher regulations, certification, we're starting to look more at what research has shown on outcomes. So perhaps when you're looking at that definition, we should think about making that more clear as to what you mean by that. And again, on 2C, it says the department shall make available a list of high quality curriculum and instructional materials. And again, just a suggestion to think about, what does that mean when you say high quality? Does that mean you've got some research behind it that can show proven outcomes? I think that's probably what you're going for. And I would suggest that may be more effective. So one of the things that we're starting to do at the State Board of Education is bring in more experts from other states and from academia to help us understand what's going on in other states and what their results are. So we just brought in some folks from Mississippi, and I'm sure you've all heard about the Mississippi Miracle, what they did with their elementary school reading. What we found was, and this is what I want to highlight that because I actually like this section, what they told us that they did as one of the components for producing those results was their department was sort of like New Hampshire. They don't mandate curricula at the local level. The local districts pick it. But what they did was they conducted a very rigorous review. They found out what all of their school districts were using for reading curricula in the whole state. They took all those curricula and then they examined them and they looked up the academic research, and they found there was a small subset that showed that these curricula actually produced results and worked. So they took those and they recommended those to the districts. Everything that was not on the recommended list, they didn't ban because they didn't have the authority, but the message was clear. If you use these proven methods, these proven curricula, you'll be in line with what we want to do with our mission here, and it really produced dramatic results. So I think, again, pointing out something in there to say that that list should ideally be based on proven outcomes might strengthen this a lot more. Oh, and one other thing, just on the 10-year review. So from what I'm hearing is, like, the main driver of this is to get rid of Common Core standards. So it would be interesting if the bill just said, get rid of Common Core standards. Our rules that we write at the State Board by statute expire every 10 years. So we're in a 10-year cycle to renew the rules. So that's what we're doing now for our rules. And it puts us on this conveyor belt where we are off most of the time playing catch up. We're just rewriting rules that are expiring. And what we find is every 10 years, and I did some look back under the rules that when they come up, under what the current rule is, what the last revision was, what the proposed revision was, and what I'm seeing over my now 9 years on the board is that there's a lot of trend and fad written into the new rule. So whenever it expires, whatever the current academic, fad is maybe too light a word, but the current trend is in academia, that's what gets written into the rules. And so if you look back at Common Core, you could sort of see Common Core as part of that. Common Core was really popular, it was really hot at the time, and that got written into our standards. So just a word of caution, when you're looking at requiring these rules to be looked at for revision every 10 years, my fear is that you might build that into the process, that every 10 years, the department or the board feels compelled. Now, it does not compel, which I think is good. It's look at the rules to see about possible revision. I like that. But if you have standards that are working, if we revise our math standards, by just to use that example, and which we should, and I think we're overdue in revising our math standards, and we get ones that are really strong and really good, this is going to require us to look at those again in 10 years, and the next board might be inclined to adopt whatever the latest trend is and revise it that way. So that just gives me a little bit of pause about that mandatory 10-year cycle. I see it backfiring in some of the rules we've written, and so I wonder if it might cause problems there. So just a note of caution there and way to think about it. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Anybody else? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1571. The next one is House Bill 1827. And the prime sponsor is Representative Ladd. Is he here? Is anybody introducing it for him? Representative Noble, do you want to just read the blurb?
Once again, good morning, Madam Chair and Senator Prentice. For the record, I'm Kristen Noble, and I represent Hillsborough District 2, the town of Bedford. I'm introducing House Bill 1827 FNA, requiring the Department of Education to conduct a confidential criminal history record check on all prospective educational personnel.
Thank you very
And there you
much.
go.
That's fine. And we have Steve Appleby from the DOE will tell us why.
Good morning and thank you. For the record, Steve Appleby, Director, Department of Education. This bill would expand a process we currently have in place whereby we check currently bus drivers statewide on a 5-year cycle. We check new applicants for an educator license when they apply for new, and we check educator preparation enrolled students when they enroll in their programs at our colleges. And we do this check so as to cut down on how many background checks individuals have to have. And more importantly, we do these checks to ensure that an individual hasn't been convicted of something on the Section 5 list, and that they haven't been revoked in another state or had action taken against their license in another state. And we do that because we're a subscriber to the NASDAQ, National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification database, where all 50 states, as well as some other jurisdictions, upload individuals who've had action taken against their license. This bill in front of you now would expand that clearance process to all educational personnel, public schools, public charter schools, and non-public special ed schools. And that would also allow us, a part of the bill, would allow us to run those individuals against the NASDAQ database nationwide, because we already have in state law that schools can't employ someone who's had their license revoked by any state. However, they have no way of knowing, right? And that's because we're the subscriber to the database, not the district. So it would just add another layer of protection for students.
Okay. Question? Do you want to mention this thing or conduct a confidential criminal history?
Yep, all criminal history record checks are confidential. It is a full FBI check, what we're proposing. And we, based on our agreement with the Department of Safety and with the FBI, we destroy all records within 60 days of receipt. That's an FBI rule. I don't know what else to say about that, but I don't know if you have other questions about that.
I guess we don't have any more questions. Thank you. If you come up with something else, let us know.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else who wants to say anything at all about 1827 FNA? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on that bill. Now we go to House Bill 1573. And the prime sponsor is Thibault.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Senator Prentice. For the record, my name is Representative James Tebow. I represent the city of Franklin and the town of Northfield, Merrimack County, District 25. And I'm here today to introduce House Bill 1573, which I introduced because every student learns differently, as I'm sure we all know, and because one of the most important, impactful ways a student can learn is experiential learning. This bill, as amended by the House, grants 2 excused absences per year to any student for events related to either civic engagement or career and technical education. To clarify, civics does not mean politics. The bill, as amended, narrowly defines a civic activity as an event hosted by a government body, not campaign rallies, protests, or other outings. While these can lead to opportunities for students, they don't provide the same constructive educational merit that, for example, testifying on a bill might, and you'll hear from some students after me. These opportunities test students' rhetorical and oratory skills, and they show a strength of character and leadership. It does not preclude students from attending such events, but the schools are not obligated to excuse those absences if they don't want to. However, there are some valuable civics programs offered by non-governmental organizations like the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and for that reason, I would support an amendment to include events sponsored by such organizations, which I included in my testimony that I provided to you. There's a federal statute that outlines certain patriotic organizations that I cited in that amendment, and that basically includes the American Legion, VFW, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and other similar organizations. So it's still pretty defined, but it provides an opportunity for those experiences to be included under this bill. Often students have to risk penalty from their schools in order to participate in some of these programs. And it isn't just a small group of students. There are opportunities like the Legislative Youth Advisory Council, which only has 10 members, but the Governor's Youth Advisory Council has 20 or over 20. Likewise, in our rural and farming communities, dozens of students go to state and county fairs every year to present their animals and other products, including at the Big E, which is an exposition in Springfield, Massachusetts. If a student works hard enough to represent New Hampshire at one of these programs, or something like the United States Senate Youth Program or the National American Legion Oratorical Competition, they shouldn't have to risk a failing grade on assignment or docked points just for incredible chances like that. If a student interested in law enforcement would like to take a day off to ride along with an officer, that should be encouraged as well. There are so many ways for these individual students to utilize these absences effectively to enhance their individual enthusiasm and future career prospects. that will further their post-graduation pathways. The bill also provides additional excusals for attending meetings of the aforementioned statutory and executive youth advisory councils, because under the language of statute and of the executive orders, those members do have obligations to those councils once they are appointed and need to be able to carry out their duties. And they also provide carve-outs for multi-day CTE conferences, so like FFA or DECA or HOSA, things like that. But I would also encourage the committee to consider expanding such language to apply to multi-day civic activities, once again, like American Legion's Oratorical or the U.S. Senate Youth Program. Oratorical typically is a 2-day thing, but you need to account for travel as well, and the Senate Youth Program is usually about a week. So these are very time-intensive things, but they're incredible opportunities for students. And because they're not just educational, they lead to extremely valuable scholarships that help students continue to pursue their career paths. Oratorical offers scholarships up to $25,000 for those students. The Senate Youth Program offers up to $12,500. It says $10,000 in my testimony, but they recently increased it. Students presenting at the Big E in Springfield can win tens of thousands of dollars for it, which I also included some numbers for recent New Hampshire winners in my testimony. These programs reward students' passions in these fields, but require them to be present, which sometimes means missing school, but the payoff is well worth it. Excused absences are important to student success because under many schools' local policies, students can only make up work from days from which they are excused. Unexcused absences mean missed assignments and thereby lower grades, penalizing students for seeking to learn more. Under HB 1573, students would still be expected to make up any assignments missed, and this should be taken into consideration when they decide to utilize these absences. In the House, some members raised the concern of the importance of local policymaking on student absence, and I agree that schools should retain the right to set their own policies. This bill allows them to set their own standards for proof of attendance and whether or not they wish to excuse more than the 2 absences a year required under this bill. The bill only sets a 2 absence standard cap with the exceptions mentioned as a statewide standard, a guarantee that the state is supporting these students pursuing their education, civic engagement, and career prospects in their own way. Similar bills have been passed with strong bipartisan support in California and New Jersey for civic events and have been widely considered to be successful, but New Hampshire would be the first to protect CTE activities as well. HB 1573 is a straightforward piece of legislation that enhances students' ability to engage in experiential learning, be involved members of their communities, and actively explore the interests that could lead to their future occupation. For this reason, I encourage you to find that the bill ought to pass as amended, or with the amendments that I included in the document attached to my testimony. And with that, I'd be happy to take either of your questions.
Thank you. You have a question?
Yes,
Senator
Chair Ward.
Prentice.
Thank you. And it's Representative Tebow?
Yes.
Okay. And actually, Representative Dry reached out to me last night.
Oh, wonderful.
She's in my district about this, and so I shared testimony that she wrote with, I gave it to Trevor to distribute to the committee. So my only question for you is under Roman numeral 2, line 9 starts talking about, career and technical education event shall be defined as any event or activity relating to a career or technical education curriculum or student organizations such as, and then you name out these different different programs, some of which I'm familiar with, some of which I'm not, but that's okay. The bigger question here is who decides, like here, you've defined certain events or certain student organizations, but there are more.
Yes.
So is there, and is there who's going to decide like what that more might be? Like we have this general, like this is I don't want to call it the floor. I'm not calling it the floor in a disrespectful way, but oftentimes you come in, you have like a floor, like here's the basics, but what's the ceiling? Is it a school that's going to say, a local district or a school itself, this organization seems to meet the intent of the law? Have you thought about that or provided any further guidance?
So thank you for that question, Senator. And yes, it does say such as, so it's non-exhaustive. And part of the reason we left it sort of open is because, well, we provided those as examples, yes, but as I mentioned in my introductory testimony, I envision the intent of this to be not just organizational, but also, again, if an individual student wants to go into law enforcement and wants to do a ride-along, I would like for that to be included as well. So, and under, goodness, yes, line 27, paragraph 5, Roman numeral 5, it says, parents shall submit a notice to school administrators no less than 2 days before their student intends to be absent to attend a civic or CTE event. There is no structure in this for administrator approval. Part of that was a concern that an administrator perhaps that could be acting politically might see, oh, this student is going to testify on this bill that the school district opposes or something, and then might not approve that absence. So instead, it's just the parents saying, my student is going to be absent with that notice, and then it's automatically excused. So, and again, the school can set a proof of attendance requirement themselves in their own policy, but ultimately, the parents make that determination on behalf of their students.
Yes, thank you. And I don't largely disagree with you. I think this is ambitious and appropriate, and I love that, I really appreciate the leaning into the CTE side of it. I mean, certainly I have hosted high school students over the years who've thought that they wanted to be EMTs and, were allowed by their parents and their school to spend a day or part or an entire day on an ambulance. So that's, I mean, it's I think that that's really smart. I'm just, and I hear what you're saying about you don't want it to become political.
No.
But there's freedom of speech, so I feel like an administrator could not say you can't go talk about this. That's what I think, but not what. But I understand your intent. I'm just looking to connect the parents, the administrators, and put, like a ceiling or a checkbox that on the top of this because you have widely defined it, or non-exhaustive is the word you used, which could allow for any possibility. But since there are some that are already named, I'm just trying to see like is there an end? Should there be an end? So it's not totally a question. I'm just thinking out loud and trying to help you and maybe fashioning this in a way that puts just one more guardrail in that would be protective and productive.
No,
Okay.
I totally understand that, Senator. And of course, it's the committee's bill. Whatever the committee would like to do with it, I would be more than happy to support in any way I can. And I totally understand where you're coming from, because there do need to be guardrails, and that's why we defined civic event so narrowly, and why I'm asking for the amendment to civic event to, again, keep it narrow, but expand it a little bit more to those non-governmental programs. And to your point about the parents and the administrators and the First Amendment, of course, that's true. Students do have freedom of speech, but freedom of speech does not necessarily mean freedom to have an excused absence from school. And that's, well, again, why we defined civics so narrowly, is because a student can go to a protest. And I'm not saying a student shouldn't go to a protest or can't go to a protest. But at the end of the day, the school doesn't need to excuse that absence. And they can if they want, but that's not what this bill is intending to do. This is specifically tied to activities that have some sort of true educational component to it. And while protest is a totally valid form of speech and an important thing to do, I don't think there's an inherently productive educational merit to it that in the same way there might be from testifying on a bill or engaging in like the oratorical contest or any of the other examples I mentioned. So I hope that clarifies that. But again, if the committee would like to hone in the definition of CTE event, I would be supportive of that.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if the activity has to be politically neutral. And you just sort of answered part of the question.
Okay.
It has to do with the school, whether or not they actually permit, or whether it's educational, a good thing for you to do.
Right, exactly. And so, like I said, so as amended by the House, civic event says an event, activity, hearing, or meeting held by a federal, state, or local government body. So And I changed it slightly in the language in the amendment that I provided with my testimony. But essentially, it needs to be done by a government entity. So for example, if a student wanted to attend, actually this just happened in my district of Franklin last week, Congresswoman Goodlander came to Franklin High School and met with students during class hours. And that was in her capacity as a member of Congress, and they spoke with her about policy. And I think that would be excused. However, if they wanted to do a campaign rally for Congresswoman Goodlander, I don't think that would be excused because that's a campaign event, not a government event. It's in her capacity as a candidate, not as a member of Congress. And I think there's a distinction there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My
Anybody
pleasure.
else? Did you sign up?
No, it did not. I apologize. Happy to sign up. Good morning, Madam Chair, Senator Prentice. For the record, my name is Becky Wilson. I'm the Director of Governmental Relations for the New Hampshire School Board Association. We appreciate the intent of this bill. However, we are opposed to it currently. I'm not sure what unexcused absences particularly are of concern by the sponsors of this bill. We talked about this when this bill was in front of the House. There was only one situation specifically that was mentioned at that time, which was students going to the Big E and not being able to leave the day before in order to get down there in time to set up for the actual event. Certainly, school districts now do allow for a lot of opportunities for students to attend any of these things that I think have been discussed. If Congresswoman Goodlander was at a school during a school day and met with students, I can't imagine those students would be considered absent from school. They are physically present in the school building. Students who are attending CTE programs through the school district are being tuitioned to the CTE programs. Often those CTE programs do have extensive trips that are involved. For example, the Education and Behavior Science program in Concord and the other CTE programs that have education and behavior science send a group of students to a national conference each year. Those are all excused absences. They're not technically considered absent. They're attending a school event that is part of the students' programs that schools are paying tuition to the CTE centers for those students to attend those programs. Years ago, when we shifted from seat time for attendance to competency-based education, there was a big shift in terms of absence policies. So it was no longer about having block absences necessarily if you missed one course versus another. It was really about looking at the full day and whether or not students were available to participate in the curriculum that was happening during the day. The concern that we have around limiting this to the 2 days is it says the school district must allow for 2 days of excused absence. What if a student is, for example, involved in a job shadowing, which happens frequently in almost all high schools across the state, and they've already used up their 2 excused absences? Again, I don't think a job shadowing would be considered part of an absence issue because students are doing that as part of their school curriculum that's already been worked into their program. So I don't think students are being considered absent necessarily during that time. Students can file for an extended learning opportunity. That would be something that if they wanted to do something long-term in terms of getting credit and making sure that they were working within the confines of what they need to do at the school, that would allow them to do outside of school experiences and not be considered absent at all. The reason that the non-excused absence sometimes comes into play is because schools are focused very much on project-based learning, hands-on learning, not just seat time, and you can't necessarily replicate those kinds of things by giving the student an assignment to do outside of the course. So while some of exceptions are certainly made, there are tons of policies about attendance. Policy JH is typically the school district's attendance policy. If the family's taking a family vacation, for example, and the parents alert the school that the child is going to be absent for an extended period of time, the teachers will work with the family to give them some sort of duplicate type projects to do while they're away so that they can continue to stay caught up. But it's really difficult, I think, to put boards or administrators or teachers in a position to try to determine what kinds of civic events are partisan, not partisan. If the parent is just saying it's these 2 days and that's it, what about if there are other things during the year? Then the child's used up their excused absence, so to speak. So it just puts everybody, I think, in an uncomfortable position of trying to judge the validity of these various civic events. It's a very broad definition in here. I'm happy to take any questions, but we have concerns about it overall.
We don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Anybody else in here who wants to talk about 1573? I don't have the sign-up sheet. Okay, state your name and where you come from and a short summary.
I'm Casey Peters. I'm a senior from Raymond, New Hampshire.
Okay, could you move your microphone a little bit closer?
Yes, I can. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Casey Peters, and I am a senior from Raymond, New Hampshire. I've lived in Raymond for the majority of my life, and like many students in New Hampshire, I care deeply about my community and my future. I'm here today to speak in support of House Bill 1573, a bill that would allow students to have excused absences when participating in civic activities and career-focused events. This isn't just about missing a day of school. It's about allowing students to learn, lead, and contribute outside of the classroom. I want to be clear, this is not a bill rooted in partisan beliefs. This isn't about Republican versus Democrat. Now is an opportunity to show the future generation that a genuine care for their education and their future isn't defined by what side of the aisle you sit on. Supporting this bill is about supporting students, our communities, and the next generation of leaders. Growing up, I felt the pressure that if I want to get involved in something like this, testify on legislation, attend government meetings, or participate in programs like FBLA or DECA, it would come at the cost of school attendance or even grades. House Bill 1573 removes that barrier and says your voice matters. Your learning happens beyond the walls and constraints of the classroom. When students are encouraged to participate in civic and career programs, they gain skills that no textbook can teach. Critical thinking, communication, leadership, and confidence. They learn that they can actually make a difference right here in New Hampshire. I urge you all to support House Bill 1573, not for a political party, but for students of this state. Let's show that New Hampshire values its youth, invests in their future, and believes in empowering the next generation. Thank you very much, and I'm willing to take any questions.
You have a question? No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? Okay.
Good morning. I support HB 1573.
Your
and I-
name?
Oh, I'll get to that. My name is Andrew King, and I'm a junior from Concord. At my school, I serve in numerous leadership positions, such as the president of the class of 2027 and president of the Ethics and Philosophy Club, among others. As a student who has always had a passion for civics and government, I have taken this time to become much more involved in government-related activities and civic programs this year. However, oftentimes these activities, events, and programs occur during school hours. This can be extremely restricting for students like myself. This school year, I've had to leave school many times during school hours to participate in meaningful civic-related events. Over the course of this year, I've had to leave for a wide variety of experiences, such as attending a governor and council meeting at the State House, participating in an interview for the United States Senate Youth Program as a finalist in the state of New Hampshire, serving multiple times as a House page for the New Hampshire House of Representatives, and I've also had to leave for meetings related to civic programs I'm involved in, as well as being here today to testify before all of you. In fact, I will leave again this Friday for a meeting as I'm a member of the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. I will also be leaving later next month in May to attend the American Legion Oratorical Finals in Michigan. Each of these opportunities has been incredibly valuable, giving me firsthand exposure to how our government works and making it feel far more accessible as a student. But even further than that, as a dedicated student, I understand that students learn a lot in the classroom. However, I also recognize that students may learn even more outside of classroom. and moments like these, when we experience the real world and grow as we step out of our comfort zone and engage with our government in a meaningful way. I also want to briefly address attendance. I care deeply about being present in school. Over the past 6 years, I've missed only 2 full days. I recognize that this is uncommon, but it reflects something important. Students value attendance, and whether an absence is excused or unexcused really does matter. I chose to testify today because I recognize it can be difficult to visualize this bill's importance without understanding the real people it affects. New Hampshire is special for its commitment to accessible government. In my view, this bill simply extends that tradition by making civic participation more accessible to students across the state. I support HB 1573, and I'm open to any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Okay, one last call. This concludes the hearing on House Bill 1573. And the next, we are taking up an amendment to 1573, and the prime sponsor is Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. This is a timely bill. The reason it's non-germane, I'm expediting a little bit, as you may have heard recently. Over in Seabrook, there was a 7th grader that was being bullied, and they asked for a manifest hardship request. The school district denied it, and following the state law, the parents appealed this to the State Board of Education, who found a manifest hardship and assigned the kid, the student to, hold on, I think it's Hampton Falls School District. However, Hampton Falls decided they don't need to follow the school board's directive to take this child. And so this statute that you see before you is a clarification to make it absolutely crystal clear that when the State Board of Education reassigns a child, which is what it's called, it's reassigning a child to a new school district, the receiving school district doesn't get to say no. It's just as if that child lives in their community and they're obligated to take that child. This came about through a conversation I had with the chairman of the state school board, who had heard the case and it was dealing with that issue before it hit the papers. But this issue needs to be resolved. It needs to make it absolutely crystal clear that when the state school board Board of Education decides that there is a manifest hardship, a child is being bullied, and that a transfer request is granted, that the receiving school needs to take that child to get them out of the situation they're in. Happy to take questions, but although I'm pretty sure Mr. Klein, who's the chairman of the board, is behind me, he'll probably be speaking in favor of this as well.
Okay. You have any questions?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's for Senator Lang or Mr. Klein, but Senator Lang, thank you for taking my question. So the district that is being asked to receive this child that is saying no, what were the reasons that they gave?
Mr. Klein could probably answer that. I don't know the exact answer. They just said no, as far as I know.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is a mini open enrollment.
Mr. Klein?
Thank you, Drew Klein, Chairman of the State Board of Education. I will get to your question, Senator Prentice. I just want to give some background on this, just for clarity. So the statute that this is amending is RSA 193.3, and the title of that statute is Change of School Assignment. Best Interest of Student is the first section, and then the second section is Manifest Education Hardship. I'm sure you guys have some familiarity with that statute, but I want to just point out, so G, it was RSA 193.3 2G. For manifest hardship, what that means is that the student has a documented hardship in the school to which they've been assigned, which is their placement. And this is typically their school district of residence. So the parent will come, and the statute requires the parent to prove. It's very hard to get a manifest hardship assignment because the parent has to prove that the assignment itself has created such a hardship that the child has extreme difficulty getting an education. So they go through the local process, and If the local district agrees, then that district will agree to reassign the student. If the local district says, no, there's not a hardship here that has affected your education, we can still educate you here. The parent has the right to appeal that to the state board. Sometimes when that happens, the parent's wrong, and we side with the school district. Sometimes we side with the parent. When that happens, again, I just want to make sure we're all following. The statute is change of school assignment. G says, if the school board finds that the parent or guardian has not met their burden of proof, the parent may appeal to the local school board decision to the State Board of Education. We have to schedule a hearing and do this. H, right under that, the next section, if a student is assigned to attend a public school, public academy in another district because of manifest educational hardship, and it goes on, the district in which the student resides shall pay tuition, et cetera. You go down a couple more paragraphs. A student reassigned under this section, et cetera, et cetera. You see that the continuity here is reassignment. So when we find that there is a manifest hardship, traditionally we have just said, we found there's a hardship, we grant the hardship and the reassignment. Typically, this all works out and the districts accept the kid. We have had a case lately where the district has said, the statute doesn't actually give you the authority to tell us to accept the kid. The statute allows the parent to appeal to you, but their interpretation is you can find a hardship, but that does not follow then that there's a reassignment. And our view, and the Department of Education's view, is that is logically inconsistent with the statute. The whole statute is framed as reassigning the student. So if a parent can appeal that local decision to the State Board of Education, but the state board lacks the authority to reassign the student, then the appeal is worthless. What's the point? We can find that there's a hardship, but we can't reassign the student, so the student is stuck in that school. Where we have said there is a manifest hardship that makes your assignment in that school the problem. So there's, in other words, no relief for that student. So a particular case we have in Seabrook was a bullying case. To get to your question, we tried to find out why Hampton Falls won't accept. The superintendent is the same superintendent for both districts because it's a multi-member district. The school principal said, yeah, sure, I'm happy to take the kid. But the school board denied the reassignment. We don't know why. They haven't told us. We're hoping to get some answers later this week. But in the meantime, we feel like there's a really important need to clarify that when the statute says reassignment, it actually means reassignment. And so that's what this amendment does. It just says that it actually puts the obligation on the Board of Ed to reassign that student. And typically the way this happens, and in the beginning part of the statute, the parent says, I want to be reassigned to a certain school. And so, again, if the interpretation of the law is we don't have the power to execute that reassignment, then the parent has no recourse. There is no actual reassignment on appeal if that interpretation is correct. I think that's incorrect. So we just want some clarity here just to make sure that when we execute a manifest hardship reassignment, that the reassignment actually happens and that there's recourse for the parent and the student. So happy to answer any questions.
We're discussing the amendment to 1573. Any questions on the amendment? Senator Altschuler? No. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I did read the amendment ahead of today's hearing, and in your testimony, you just said that the Board of Education should be able to force that transfer for manifest hardship. But this amendment says that the State Board of Education shall grant the parent or guardian's request to reassign the student to another public school. It doesn't say a specific public school, just to another. So if there is a problem with one school board or principal accepting a student, there are half a dozen other schools within, you know, a certain radius, I'm sure.
So the way the statute is written, it is a reassignment, and the parent requests the reassignment. And so when the local school district says, no, we reject this hardship finding and we reject the reassignment, they can appeal to us. And then if we find that there was a hardship, we grant that A, there was a hardship, and B, we grant the parent's request to reassign, right? So we grant that reassignment. And so if we don't have, if the statute is interpreted in such a way as we can't grant the parent's request, which is what this is, it's a request for reassignment. So if we can't reassign the student, then you could easily have a situation where the student is stuck in the assigned school that can't educate them. So in theory, you could say, well, if they don't get their first choice, there are others. But in this particular case in Seabrook, and in other cases we've had, the parent picks a particular school for a very specific reason. Often it's because it's the closest school that can do the job for their child, so they don't have to drive and have a hardship on their family to get the child to the other school. So in this particular case, they like the school, that it's close to their house. They could have chosen to go to any number of other schools in the area, but this one fit their needs the best. And the principal said yes. So again, it's just clarifying in the statute that the state board can actually follow through and execute the reassignment powers that we think we already have.
May I follow up?
Follow up?
Thank you. So I'm hesitant to speak about a particular case since we don't have all the information and we don't know why the school board made the decisions they did. So we can't really speak to that. This amendment, though, understand, like reading it very specifically is shall grant the parents or guardian's request to reassign the student to another public school. It doesn't say to the public school of their choice. It just says to another public school. So there may be instances where a parent needs to get their child out of a particular public school for what has been demonstrated as a manifest hardship. No one's debating that. That's not the issue. They know that the school their child is in is not meeting their needs and is actually problematic for their child.
Right.
They may have chosen another school, and for whatever reason, and we don't know what that is, we can't speculate, that school does not take that child, but another school will.
But
And it is, this says just reassign to another school, which is the issue, is get the child out of the place where they're not learning, where they're not thriving, and put them somewhere else.
sure, right. So the problem with that logic is every other school can say no. So if the state board isn't granting the parent's requested reassignment, then the child can end up in limbo, as is currently the case in the latest case we're talking about. So and if you go down to C, the C2 under RSA, so this might not be in your copy. I've printed out the statute here, so you might not have that in there. So 193.3, and you go down to 3A, and then B, and then C, C2D, the total reassignments or transfers in any one school year shall not exceed 1% of the average daily membership and residence of a school district or 5% of the average daily membership and residence of any single school, whichever is greater, unless the school board votes to exceed this limit. So this is existing statute. This, to me, anticipates that there will be enough reassignments that conceptually there could be enough reassignments that a district you would have one district that is not meeting the needs of a bunch of kids, they're getting hardship reassignments, and a neighboring district can say, whoa, after we hit this percentage threshold, we can say we're not going to accept any more students. So that's in statute. That is the threshold by which the statute contemplates a district being able to say no. So if that weren't in there, I'll put it this way, because that is in there, I think it's pretty clear that the statute anticipates the Board of Ed being able to reassign a student to a chosen school. Because if we didn't have the authority to reassign the student, there's no need to put this in here. A district could simply say no at any time, no matter what. So the very fact that it's there, I think, underscores our point, which is we've always had this power to grant the parent's request for reassignment. We just have a need now to clarify that further in statute just to make sure there's no disagreement about it.
Any other questions? Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
When a family or a student's applying for trying to demonstrate the manifest educational hardship, in that process, is the school that they desire to be replaced or reassigned to in the application, or is that brought up during the hearing?
So
Is it a required?
it varies, right? So sometimes the parent chooses a school and says, we want to be reassigned to this school in the neighboring district. Sometimes they don't. They're so focused on getting out that they don't tell us what school they want to go to, and they're kind of happy to go, just any place else. So it really varies. In this particular case that's in the news, the parent picked one particular school, but that's not always the case. So sometimes that assignment is made after we grant the hardship, and then the parents say, okay, now we're going to go find the school. But again, the statute does anticipate a trigger with which a district could start to say no to reassigned students. So that again tells me that we have had this power to reassign all along. We just need that clarity.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Senator Prentice?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Klein, for taking
Sure.
my question. So if I'm hearing correctly from you, this is the first time when a reassignment has been made at your level
Yeah.
that a local school board, not the principal or administrator, has said no.
So I can tell you that during my tenure on the board, this is the first time that I'll put it this way, if a school district or a school has said no to a reassignment before, to my recollection, it hasn't come back to us. So there could be a case where a parent said, okay, fine, I'll go to another school. This is the first time in my experience, to my recollection, that a district has simply said, no reason, no justification. They've actually told us, you don't have the authority to do this, and that's all we have to tell you. We're not taking the kid. And we've had no communications from them other than that. That's pretty unusual. But I can tell you that I asked our hearing officer, the gentleman in the department who runs our hearings, to go back and look at our hardship cases and our other cases that we hear, because I can tell you in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot more bullying cases and a lot more hardship cases in general. And sure enough, the number of manifest hardship claims that get to the State Board of Education is increasing in the last few years. I don't know why that is, but the proportion is much higher than it used to be. I can speculate that it might have something to do with after COVID, parents being more assertive with their rights. I don't know, but we're hearing a lot more of them. And even in my tenure on the board, when I first got on the board, we would maybe hear in the disputes between a parent and a district, whether it's manifest hardship or not, we might hear 3 or 4 cases a year. In the last, I guess I'd say 2025 we're now hearing 3, 4, 5 cases a month. The volume of cases has dramatically increased. I don't know why, but we're seeing a lot more manifest hardship cases and a lot more bullying cases. And we're seeing McKinney-Vento homelessness cases because of the high cost of housing. We're seeing a lot more of those. So there's definitely something out there that's happening to bring us a lot more of these reassignment cases. And this does not apply to the McKinney-Vento homelessness cases, only the manifest hardship cases. But I fear that without this statutory clarification, we're going to see more districts just say, oh, well, we're just not going to do it.
I have a follow-up. No, sorry, Senator Sullivan, hang just a second. Follow-up? Thank you, Mr. Klein. So this is an unfortunate situation, and especially where there's no communication about why this decision is not being accepted. I would expect that that would be on the record at some point.
Can I interrupt you there just a second? I appreciate your.
I'm going to go.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. All right.
But and again, I wanted to emphasize the unfortunate nature of this
Yeah.
because I hear you about, in particular about bullying and all my time here. That's just, a consistent problem. But are we setting up a mechanism to circumvent local school board decisions? I mean, is that an unintended consequence of
Right.
this?
I don't
that could
think
be
so.
problematic in the future?
Well, the reason I don't think so is because the statute is designed already to do that. So this doesn't change the threshold, and it's a very high bar to get a manifest hardship claim. So this doesn't change that at all, doesn't change any of the criteria. It just says when the case gets to the State Board of Education, if we decide there is a hardship, and sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, then consistent with the rest of the statute, that finding that there's a hardship follows through with reassignment. Because again, the whole statute is titled change of school assignment. The whole purpose is to reassign the student. So if we don't have that authority, I think we do, but if it's not clear, I think we're going to see more districts do what this district did. And what I was trying to interrupt you for is we have received communications from them, from their attorney. And the communication was, we're not party to this lawsuit. We're not party to this case because we don't believe you have the authority to reassign to us. So it has nothing to do with us. This is only Seabrook. So we're not party to it. We don't have to pay any attention to you. Whether that parent wants to go to Northampton or not is none of our concern. You have no jurisdiction here is what we're being told. And I just think that's statutorily wrong. And I think without this clarification, we're going to see more districts do that and just say, yeah, we don't have the authority. And we very well could run into a situation where every district within a convenient drive of that student says no, and then there's no reassignment and the student's stuck. And in that case, the statute does give us the authority to exempt that student from compulsory attendance laws. Currently, it gives us that authority. In this particular case, for the first time in my 9 years on the board, we have granted that because the student was getting bullied in his assigned school. And we exempted him from compulsory attendance laws because he's in limbo. The chosen school district has said no, not given a reason other than to say you don't have the authority to do it, so we're not going to talk to you. And the child is in a situation where he has two choices. Well, I guess they could homeschool, but the parent, their working family, I don't think homeschooling is an option for them. He stays home where he goes back to the school where he was bullied. The statute was clearly designed to remedy that situation. And so all we're asking for in this is to clarify that we can actually remedy those situations.
No, good.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my
Sure.
question. So in these cases of manifest hardship, what is the cost to the taxpayer when this continues to go on as a conversation and trying to get kids out?
The districts are typically represented by outside counsel. So those legal bills will continue to pile up. When the student is reassigned, the cost to the district is they pay tuition to the other school, and that student is counted for state residency or state aid purposes as a resident of the sending district. So they'll continue to get the state aid. And so I think I haven't tried to pull the local district's legal bills in these cases. I suspect that in some of the ones that go on for a long time, if you pulled the legal bills, they would add up to significantly more than the tuition cost of sending the student. But I'm speculating there.
Although I understand this is a piece that we need to address and we need to have. in the long term, wouldn't open enrollment, I'm sure EFAs have helped in some of these cases. Wouldn't
Yes.
open enrollment also help?
It would, in theory. And so if you had open enrollment, I suspect that you're going to see far fewer manifest hardship cases if we had real full open enrollment. But I don't think they go away, because I think there are some, so just to give you an example, I don't monopolize everybody's time here, but just as an anecdote, I don't think that's going to solve all the problem. We've had cases where we have one this month, we had one recently, where the students are actually graduated from that school and long gone. And yet we still have the bullying case that we have to hear, because the student wants on the record, the family wants the justice to be done, so to speak, to actually have the determination that there was bullying. And I think in some cases, that's just an example of how parents will choose to fight through this, and they'll want to get their remedies through this, and they may not want to do it through the open enrollment program. So I don't think it's going to end manifest hardship. I think we're going to still have those cases, even if open enrollment passes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excuse me, any other questions?
I have one.
Senator
Yes.
Prentice?
Thank you, Mr. Klein. I had it before and I got off on another subject, but I want
Sure.
just provide me with clarity.
Mhm.
Maybe you said this and I missed it. So the district or the school board's rejection of the reassignment, and again, we don't have a reason except they're saying you don't have the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But what if that school board's rejection is based on resources or costs?
Yeah, so, that's a great question. The statute provides that the resident district tuitions the child over, so cost should not be a reason. There's another, I'm not sure it's in the one I printed out here. Let me just try to find it. I don't want to take your time reading. Anyway, the statute does clarify that if a student is reassigned, the receiving school, the student must meet the qualifications to attend that receiving school, other than residents in the district, right? So it does give schools some leeway to say, yeah, there are reasons here. We have our qualifications for entering the school. You don't meet them. I would speculate what those are, but it does give the receiving school or district some ability to reject a student. If they have qualifications for entering that school and that student doesn't meet them, they can say no. So cost should not be a reason, but there is a statutory carve out for a very narrow number of cases, I would assume.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Anybody else in the audience who wish to speak on this amendment to 1573? You want to speak again? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, again, my name is James Tebow. I'm a state representative for Franklin and Northfield, Merrimack County District 25. I'll be very brief. I just want to say, as the prime sponsor of the underlying bill, I do support this non-germane amendment. I think it addresses a really important concern that affects students of the state. And having gone through a best interest hearing process myself, which is similar to the manifest educational hardship process, it's already an incredibly taxing and difficult thing for families to go through. And to make it even more complicated by having districts that say that they don't have to accept the students, it should not be something that any family has to deal with. So with that, I would encourage you to adopt this amendment. And with since I believe the previous two speakers already addressed most of the content of the amendment, I won't be taking questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Come up.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the whole committee. That's exciting. Thank you for letting me take a couple of minutes. For the record, my name is Becky Wilson. I'm the Director of Governmental Relations for the New Hampshire School Boards Association. We just wanted to offer some clarification that yes, under the current law, the state board does not currently have the authority to place students. They do have the authority to hear a manifest education hardship appeal about whether or not the hardship has been granted, but they do not have an authority to currently place students in a specific school or school district. So Chairman Klein is not wrong about the fact that that is not currently part of the appeal process. There are criteria when there is a manifest ed in terms of reassigning students that school boards, superintendents, the state board can consider, specifically about whether or not the requested school has the ability to accommodate the student based on existing school capacity. There are some best interest aspects to it as well. The student's academic, physical, personal, and social needs, and again, whether or not the school in the district has the ability to accommodate the student. So I don't want to speak to this particular case. I don't have the ins and outs of that particular issue. Certainly, any parent and family that is going through manifest ed hardship is certainly had much discussion about some very challenging things, and we certainly don't want to minimize the situation that those families are in. However, the fact that there is not a specific reason that's being given to the state board in this particular case, I can't speak to that, but the local school board is not necessarily obligated to take the student, and there are other options for the family and the superintendent and to look at other schools. Again, it may not be the initial first choice, so to speak, of the parent or the family, but there are other options that the family can pursue in terms of once the manifest ed has been granted. I'll try to answer any questions.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, last call. Anybody else? This closes the hearing on the amendment to House Bill 1573. Is that it all, Sheila?
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I request a caucus?
Caucus?
Yes, please.
We'll recess for a caucus. Yeah, we just closed the hearing, but not the public hearing. Never mind.
I move that we go into executive session.
We are going into executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's take up 131.
Okay.
And was this a question on wording?
Yes. On page 4, line 17.
Page 4, line 17. Got an email from Elizabeth Brown at the DOE questioning the use of negligence versus gross negligence. And I think what we're going to do is to, on line 17, take out that sentence that starts with, for the purpose of this chapter, and then take out that sentence. Is that agreeable?
Yes, and Madam Chair, that same paragraph on page 4, in line 14, says, any person aggravated as a result of gross negligence or willful misconduct in violation of any provision, where it says that it doesn't, whether it's willful or a byproduct of negligence, you know, for the purposes of, I think the intent here is that you've been aggravated by the failure to follow a policy. So, although you normally would incorporate a mens rea, you have, it's either willful or negligence, you have both. So really, anyone aggravated at this point now would be able to seek a remedy. You don't have to actually put, it says gross negligence, but you don't have to put, you can just write it as any person aggravated by a violation of any provision of RSA 193-F, whether it's willful misconduct or negligence or gross negligence. It doesn't change the fact that they're aggravated. So I don't believe you would need to even put either one of those. Your argument or your remedy is you were aggravated by the violation of RSA 193-F:4. So I would
Senator,
recommend,
do you mean aggrieved and not aggravated?
yes, sorry, I don't have my glasses on.
That's all right. You're too young for that route, man.
I was gonna say,
Give me the
just
glasses.
an old
He's just
excuse.
blocking us now.
Well, aggravated is normally the, I think, appropriate word, but aggrieved does mean the same thing.
So does the committee agree that we should take out that sentence on line 17?
And
Yes.
then I think
Senator
Daryl also
Abbott?
wants to take out.
Senator Prentice?
Yeah, I have other concerns, so that, yeah, whatever.
But I would recommend, at the very least, if it's going to be negligence, it says gross negligence, which
The gross was struck out in that.
it was struck out, but it still says gross negligence on that line. So it's whether we want that to say negligence. I don't think you have to actually say either one.
Well, the question I have is, do we need that sentence or don't we? Either we keep it
It's
in
a-
there or we delete it.
For the, it's a,
Senator Altshuler?
yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It is it is redefining gross negligence, and, you know, for the purposes of this chapter, it is ratcheting down from gross negligence to negligence. And making the, you know, the threshold to private rights of action really, really, really low.
Okay, so what are you proposing?
Well, I'm proposing we ITL this, so there you go.
Keep it in there?
Yeah, no, I'm just, I wouldn't change 193-F:9 to make gross negligence just negligence for the purposes of a private right of action.
Okay, so we're back to the line. Do you want to keep it in? How about you, Senator Prentice?
We
You're
can keep the line,
indifferent to it? Okay.
we can keep the line in, I just want
So,
to speak to the larger
Senator
issue at
Abbott,
hand.
did you want to put back in gross negligence?
That's the existing law?
Here,
Well, let's,
yeah.
So if that's the existing law, then, we can, all right, so we can just leave it in.
Leave 193,
We'll leave the
F9.
gross negligence language in there, but I would just say,
so put
But-
gross back in, is what you're saying?
yes.
Yes, okay.
So does it have the same definition? Means deliberate,
So,
indifference?
and take out line 18's, the failure to behave, the redefinition. If you take out the bold, it reverts back to what is currently in 193 F9, private right of actions.
I think we overthought it, Madam Chair. We basically want RSA-F:9 to remain the same. Not as in the bill, as the existing law. And whether someone supports the underlying policy throughout the rest of the
Yeah.
bill is another story, but.
So tell me exactly how you want that.
So for the purpose of the committee amendment,
Yep.
193-F:9 will not be changed at all under the existing law. So you would not strike gross or deliberate indifference. So it's for the purpose of this chapter, gross negligent means
So we put gross negligence
deliberate
back in?
indifferent.
Yes,
And you strike the failure to behave with the level of
Okay.
care that a
And we
reasonable
put
person.
deliberate back in?
correct,
Deliberate indifference, yes.
correct.
Gross that means deliberate indifference or failure to behave.
No,
No,
no, just deliberate indifference, period.
And take out this
Yeah.
bold?
yes.
Yeah, that returns it back to the original text,
Okay, so we're taking out the bold section, the bold part of that sentence,
correct.
okay? So on line 17, for the purpose of this chapter, gross negligence means deliberate indifference.
That, yes, that brings us back to the original text of 193 F9.
And then next in the sentence, and nothing in this section shall supersede or replace.
That is in law, yes.
Did you get that, Charlotte? Okay. So that would be a committee amendment.
Correct.
So we took care of that. Other than that, on the bill itself, there's, you'll have an OTP on it? Senator
I
Prentice
just-
has the question?
I have just a number of comments going back and looking at Representative Ladd's testimony. It might require more than one committee amendment, and then there's just the underlying issue of where we're at with bullying in general in the state. But Representative Ladd he presented this under neutral, but I went back and looked at it, how page 1, line 10, say the bill should be amended to include public academies. He references on page 2 that the committee should consider an amendment to say school principal or designee.
Yep.
Have we got these things all done?
Uh-huh.
So this is already included or not? No, okay, so I just think
Yeah, you're right, he meant to add
Yeah.
public academies.
right?
Yeah.
So principal or designee on page 2. He expressed concern with page 4, which referenced out-of-state bullying reporting requirements.
Where are you on page 4?
Line 6.
Line 6? Okay, what about line 6?
It should be school principal, amendment to say school principal or designee.
So that's on line 2. I mean, that's on page.
Well, so we're moving, there's two different things. This is,
Okay. So page 2, line 2, going to the school principal or other personnel, you want that to say or designate.
Principal or designee, right.
yes.
And then on page 4, you're looking at the out-of-state language on line 6 on page 4. So the number of waivers for parental notification, number of waivers granted for investigation extensions, number of out-of-state cyberbullying cases reported. Is that the part?
Correct.
I'm What is your recommendation?
No, I don't. So, did you want to change any of that? Or if you do, to what?
Investigating the numbers. I'm just reflecting on what Representative Ladd said. I don't have a solution at this moment, and if I'm going to bring something forward, I'll bring it forward in a floor amendment, but I do have underlying issues. I just want to make sure that Representative Ladd's comments were considered as part of this,
Yeah, you're
because
right.
he made really as Representative Ladd does, he's
I had
very
them-
specific.
I had them written down, I forgot to take a look at them.
You're always 10 steps ahead of me, so thank you, Senator Ward. So I don't have a remedy, he just wanted consideration, and I think we need to go back and look at a bill that was passed, I think it was 2 years ago, that had to do with out-of-state, the crossing, including out-of-state parties in, the bullying, remedying, investigations and remedying of bullying, because it's not just all within the borders of the state that this is happening. So out of state, and then he referenced Ms. Bradford. Private, so we already dealt with private right of action. I think those were the big Representative Ladd comments that I wanted to make sure.
Okay, do you want to read back, because I'm
I don't
not
think
quite
you
sure.
changed anything there.
I didn't
It was
change
only
anything,
on-
I'm just putting it, the first two things, yes. Sorry, Senator Sullivan, I just cut you off, and that was not what I meant to do.
No, you're
I don't
fine.
have anything for out of state, except saying that we should probably look at the law that was just passed, it was passed within, so the last 3 years, it had to do with out of state, and I should have looked at it ahead of time. So I can deal with that in a floor amendment if this moves forward. But are we going to change on page 1, line 10, to include public academies?
Yes.
Okay.
We're gonna add
ev-
public-
Everything else that I brought up, except for what to do with the out-of-state, that that Representative Ladd brought forward, is going to be addressed in a committee amendment.
Okay.
Second thing was just the school principal or designee. There's really two things. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now, where are you putting in the public academies? On Roman numeral 2? The school board of each school district and the board of trustees of a chartered public school and public academies.
Yes. That is where he specifically cited it. I know to myself.
Public academies. Okay. Shall no later than 6 months after the effective date. Okay. And there had been some question about harassment and bullying and intimidation not being in here, but it's all in the bill. So all those things are mentioned in here. And then on page 2, on line 2, the school principal or designee or other school personnel. And then we have the last thing on page 4, where we put back gross negligence means deliberate indifference, and took out the bolded section. And what happened with Roman numeral 2? Up on page 4.
Nothing.
Nothing? So we're all set with that. Okay, does the committee agree to those changes?
So I'd like to make a motion of ought to pass on House Bill 131 with the recommended committee changes on lines 1, 2, and 4.
We have to make,
So there's the ought to pass motion first, and then make an additional motion
Okay.
for ought to pass as amended.
So do I have a motion on the committee changes that we've made?
So I'd like to make a motion of ought to pass on HB 131.
Okay. I have a second on that? I'll second it with committee changes.
Oh, we have to do that after.
So now we have an ought to pass with the committee changes.
No.
I'll make a motion to adopt the
we haven't voted on the amendment. the committee
I'll make a
amendment.
I think
motion
that's
to
where we're
adopt the
going right now.
Recommended committee changes.
I thought I just did that. Okay, we'll do that. We have a motion to adopt the recommended committee changes.
I'll second.
We'll have a second on it, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Aye.
Now, do we have the changes taken care of? The committee changes?
You just have to call the nays of whoever didn't support.
The what?
Did anyone not support?
I supported the changes.
I supported the
Anybody
changes.
who does not
Yeah,
support the
thank you.
changes?
Thank you.
Everybody in favor?
Yes.
Okay. 5-0 for the changes. Now, can we go back to the bill?
I'll make a motion of ought to pass. as
We have an
amended.
ought
We
to
are-
pass
Yeah.
with a second. And all those, discussion. Any further discussion on 131?
Yes.
Senator Altsheler?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There's no daylight between any of us here in wanting to prevent and address and bullying within our schools. There's no question that we need to address this problem. What this bill does, though, is it puts in the hands of the school the responsibility to manage things that have happened outside of the schools. And we heard significant testimony that cyberbullying was the biggest of problems. But we didn't hear anything about parents having to bear some responsibility for providing the tools that these students are using to bully other students. So if the tool that is used most often for cyberbullying is a cell phone, and the schools have already taken, and the legislature has mandated that schools remove the cell phones from the classrooms, how are the parents not being held for any responsibility of providing the tool that is clearly a problem for a child who is doing the bullying? They're not mature enough and they can't handle having the phone. And now, instead of the parents taking responsibility for their own child's behavior, we are foisting it upon the schools and saying, you fix it. And we're only doing this for some schools that we support in New Hampshire. So, this is, we keep telling the schools to do more and more and more, and now we're asking them to parent our children too. And I think that parents need to be responsible for their own children and supplying their children with the tools that if they can't handle it, they shouldn't have it. So I think that this bill is a gross overreach. I support the handbooks and putting policies in place, but putting teachers' certifications in danger because parents don't parent, that's not appropriate.
But this is not the only bill that we have that talks about bullying.
This is the only one we're talking about now, though.
Pardon?
This is the only one we're talking about now.
That's true, but I mean,
Yeah.
if it's listed somewhere else and that's going to be public knowledge, how many places do we have to put it in? That's my question.
I'm sorry, I don't follow. What? I don't follow.
Okay.
Tell me. Oh,
We've had, I don't know how many things we have on bullying. And
No.
there are outlines, and I know that Senator Fenton has one on bullying.
That's what
And I don't have the bill in front of me right now, but if you go through all the stuff that you have to do and the parents' responsibility, do you have to repeat everything in every bill that has to do with bullying? Is my question.
I see. I see what you're saying there. In this particular bill, though, it's very specifically enumerated on page 1 that bullying or cyberbullying that occurs on or is delivered to school property or school-sponsored activity or event on or off school property. So that's under the direction of the school. We're talking about, field trips and away games. But B, occurs off school property or outside of a school-sponsored activity or event. if the conduct interferes with a pupil's educational opportunities or substantially disrupts the orderly operations of the school or school-sponsored activity. So now, after this, it outlines an entire procedure which ultimately ends with a teacher's certification being in question, and also leaves out part-time teachers, because they're not certified, leaves out office staff, leaves out custodians, leaves out food service, and the code of conduct isn't applicable to them for any kind of certification. So they're completely abdicated from having to participate in this at all. So now you're targeting just a specific population of the adults in the school to handle a situation that the parents have done zero things that have been called to account. This doesn't say this doesn't say bring the parents in and find some solutions. It just goes straight for a teacher certification. So, where are the parents? Where are the
Well,
parents?
Senator Altshuler, on line 23, a statement indicated how the policy shall be made known to school employees, regular school volunteers, pupils, parents, legal guardians, or employees of a company under contract to a school district, or charter public school. So parents are included in what is this policy and what are
Correct.
so.
Yes, totally agreed. But there's the only people who can be penalized in this setup are the certified teachers. Only people who are certified.
Okay.
So all of those other people, while they're apprised of a policy, and they should be, there should be a policy, you should be apprised of the policy, but the only people who are held to account for the policy are the certified teachers for things that may have happened off of school grounds, out of their control, but then bleeds into the classroom, and nobody outside is held responsible for what's happening.
Okay.
So,
I have an ought to pass with a second. And how many are in favor of ought to pass for this particular bill?
Ought to pass as amended?
Pardon?
It's an ought to pass as amended?
Yes,
Yes.
with the committee amendments. Yes.
Senator Prentice has her
Senator
hand up.
Prentice.
Thank you, Senator Ward. I'll make this brief. So we have a study bill from Senator Fenton, and I actually introduced it for him over in the House, SB 575, which could be used as a vehicle for all. I mean, when I look back at this testimony and I think about how complicated this issue is, that we've already passed laws and that we can't get this situation with bullying and this new, this other layer of cyberbullying, like, under control. And one of the things I definitely heard during the testimony was this reluctance of, to report or escalate the conversations, which allows this to continue to go on in the schools. I just, I would support going to study this and putting all of these things into the study bill as it's set up, versus trying to pass something that I don't know if it's going to get us where we want to go. So with laws already being passed and no compliance with that, or not enough compliance with that, I just feel like we're just spinning our wheels and should take a stop. And I don't want any more bullying to happen. I took to heart what Anne Marie Banfield had to say, and I appreciate her perspective on this, but are we moving, should we use the study committee to work out these complexities? That's all I want to say. So that's why I'm not going to support this because of that. And it's not because I don't want to stop bullying and the different permeations and complexities in the schools. Thank you. I'm done.
So are you suggesting that we should take all the bullying bills and put them together and have a study committee?
There is, Madam Chair, there is a SB 575 is already out there, been passed by the Senate to study.
For a study committee?
For a study committee. And so my recommendation is taking everything related to bullying and putting it into that as the vehicle.
Okay.
Because it's not like we're without laws and rules. It is what we're without is compliance or we were without compliance and we have this level of reluctance. And so this continues to happen in the schools, and I take it very seriously. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Sullivan?
Yeah, I just have a comment. So I don't know why parents are being vilified yet again. We heard testimony from I think it was the Principals Association, but the woman that was here representing a body of the schools that said that they're still having trouble with the cell phones. I've had parents contact me saying the schools aren't even enforcing the cell phone policy in the school. A lot of parents send their kids to school with a cell phone for safety reasons, right? They're not enforcing it. They're also giving kids Chromebooks and iPads in school that parents have no control over during the school day. So I just want to, I don't know why parents are being vilified in this. I think that there's some accountability to be had all the way around if a child is behaving this way and torturing another child. And doing cyberbullying, but I think that there's accountability all the way around.
Would you like to rescind the OTP and go for a study committee instead?
Thank you. I don't, because I think that the study committee is going to have to look at why the laws that we currently have for bullying are not being upheld, why kids are still, this is the number one thing. I get, for EFAs, I get calls from parents about bullying and IEPs. Those are my two big things that the needs are not being addressed in public schools. And I think that any legislation that we can help with that is positive. But I think the study committee is going to look at why the laws we have already aren't being enforced, because they're not. I mean, I have parents that go to the school board and the principal and everything that they can do. We heard from the School Board Association, the Board of Education today, that it elevates to their level when parents have had enough. They can't do anything else. So there's something is happening where our laws are being dismissed. Part of the problem is we don't have teeth. This actually has some teeth in it. And I think that we need all the tools right now until we figure it out. And maybe the study committee is able to put those things together into one.
So you're in favor of passing this bill?
I am.
Okay. And then if it shows up, then we can also put that in the study later on, so, okay.
Madam Chair, just for points of clarification, there was some, while deliberating, it was suggested that there's no discipline outlined, although it doesn't say the exact form of discipline, it does require a statement that there shall be disciplinary consequences or interventions or both for people who commits an act of bullying or cyberbullying. Also, to say that the parents aren't involved, the superintendent or the principal, the designee, would also have a conference with all the parties involved. So, I mean, to me, bullying, cyberbullying, it's all the same. Like, I don't even think you necessarily have to differentiate under the law. But in the respect to cyberbullying, when that happens outside of the school activity, to think that it's not going to impact the student when they go to school, I think that's. I don't think that's the case. I mean, things can happen outside of it, and it could then disrupt the academic environment.
So we can pass this, and then if necessary, we can always add a floor amendment. That's a possibility, or something. So I have an OTP with a second. How many people will support this version right now?
As amended.
Pardon?
As amended.
Yeah.
Yes.
As amended.
Aye.
2, 3, and the 2. So we'll have a 3-2. Do you want to take it out since Senator Sullivan?
Sure.
We don't put it. It's no question that this is a huge issue. How about if we do 1635? Because I know somebody is sitting here waiting
I'm sorry, what?
patiently.
1635?
1635 is the bill that has to do with changing the frequency of suicide prevention instruction. And speaking with several people, most of them like to keep it the way it was and not changing it because they feel it's very important and we need to have the regular training or the lecturing or whatever we do with them. So my recommendation would be to ITL 1635.
I'll make the motion to
And I'll-
ITL.
And I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Second, Senator Prentice. All those in favor of ITL?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we put it on consent?
Move for consent?
Second.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0. Okay. Now you can go.
I can take it out. If that's, do you want me to
Senator
take it out?
Prentice
Senator
will
Ward?
take it out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll take it out.
1099.
Isn't that a form you fill out for your taxes?
It's taxes.
It's not your,
Right.
no tax information.
So, and you had a replace all amendment on 1099?
What is this thing here?
Senator Ward, don't you have a replace all on 1099?
Yeah, let me take a look at.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, this is the bill to study the private businesses providing special and behavioral education services.
1009?
1099.
Oh, mine's misspelled. Yep.
And that turned out, talking to Representative Ladd, it turned out that that was not a very simple thing to do. He said there are so many things that are involved in so many agencies that you have to contact and talk to. So this amendment is a replace all for that.
Madam Chair, is that amendment 1248S?
1248S, yes.
Thank you.
So procedurally, would it be appropriate, or did I miss it, to have a motion for ought to pass, bring this amendment in as a committee amendment to replace all, and then pass it as amended?
Uh-huh.
Okay, am I good? So I'll make it,
Motion.
I'll make a motion.
You need a motion to.
I'll make a motion for ought to pass on 1099.
Okay.
And then I'll make a motion or introduce Senator Ward's Amendment 1248S. And I don't know if there's any comments on it, but I'll make a motion to ought to pass.
Okay. So the amendment is ought to pass. Anybody further discussion on it? All in favor of passing the amendment 1248S?
Aye.
Aye.
Senator Altshuler?
Aye.
Okay. So that's, and moving to the bill 1099, the amendment with the underlying bill. Have ought to pass.
Make a ought to
Further
pass as
discussion?
amended?
As amended.
OTPA.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll second it. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Ought to pass, and put it on consent?
We have
So
to
it's-
pass it first.
Yes, it was I think it was 5-0.
Consent 5-0. I'll take that one out.
Move consent.
On
Second.
consent.
I'll second that.
Take it down that end of the table.
We just need to have a vote on the consent.
So was it Senator Altshuler and Senator Abbas on,
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye, 5. Okay, that's 1099. 1267.
who's taking it out? Senator Ward, who would you like to take out 1099?
Would you like to take up what?
1099?
Thought I did.
She did.
You
Yeah.
are?
But yes,
I
yes,
missed
yes,
it,
yes,
sorry.
yes, I'm taking out 1099. Yes.
So HB
So
12,
1267, prohibiting school districts, attorneys, and non-school personnel from questioning students without their parents or guardians present.
I'll make a motion ought to pass.
I'll second.
Yeah, to pass with a second. Any discussion on it?
They're all shown.
Yeah,
Senator Altshuler?
Yeah, I think I'm still just a little queasy about that the department has to come up with best practices for this. And we already have we already have procedures in place for this. So I'm I'm not sure why we need this, to be honest with you. We didn't have an incident. It was all hypothetical and speculation, and right now, it's really important that when there are reports of abuse and neglect, that DCYF is able to do their job and law enforcement is able to do their job. And I don't know. I'm not sure why we need this.
Well, I think we never know. Usually it's because something has happened.
But we didn't get any testimony about anything happening.
Senator Prentice?
I just, thank you, Senator Ward and Senator Altshuler. So just to address this in backwards order, there is protection in the starting on line. Now, I'm going to need to get new glasses soon, but 18.
I know you're talking about 18, yeah.
Yeah, so it would, if there's a case that involves, a child welfare issue, injury, abuse and such, then parental consent, as I understand this, would not be needed to do that. So that would protect a child who is in a place where to have a conversation about abuse or neglect that they may be a victim of or a party to, if I'm reading this correctly. So, because that was a major, I'm glad you brought it up, that was a concern of mine to make sure that that was in there. The bill's sponsor did bring up one situation, and I don't recall all the details on it, but I believe she's from the Milford area. So there is at least one situation, and sometimes we're asked to pass bills on one situation, sometimes we're asked to pass them on 100, but what does concern me is that a child would ever be without consent and without parental consent and be alone and being questioned, which could be by could be by law enforcement, another school official. I mean, I think that this is a reasonable protection. I would have expected that this honestly was already in place. So to find out that it's not in place is concerning to me. So that's why I hear what you're saying, Sarah Altshuler. I'm going to support this for those reasons.
Well, she did introduce the bill, and she did mention the incident that had taken place,
Okay.
Representative Sheehan, so.
And it wasn't a criminal issue. Yeah, it says in here it's a teacher conduct issue, but again, I am surprised that this isn't already in place.
Okay, do we need
I thought you had to have a parent with you.
further discussion on the bill?
Law enforcement. I'm just going to keep talking.
I have an OTP and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Senator Altshuler? Yes, no?
No,
No, okay, so it's
That's okay. I mean,
be 4-1.
I have no objection to consent.
Can we
I'm just-
put it on consent?
Yeah.
4-1?
I'm just not supporting it.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion for consent?
Second.
Motion to consent. So that's 4-1?
Then we
Right.
vote.
All in,
No, I'll consent. That's fine.
So just call for all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-1. Jesus.
5-0.
and I would be willing to take this out, Senator Ward.
Do you want to take it off,
Yeah.
Prentice? Okay. That's 1267. Well, we could take out a couple of others. 15, 14.
I'm going to make a motion on a pass. 14.
Do I have a second on passing?
Second.
I had something written down here on comment and amendment, line 4. Do we have an amendment? Department of Education shall annually send all school compliance and financial reports to every elected school board official. And I have written down create and send.
Yep, create and send school district compliance report. It's the language. So, Department of Education shall annually send all school compliance and.
So you voted motion out to pass, Senator Prentice?
I made the motion about to pass. So
Okay.
we can talk about
Do we have a
amending it.
second? I'll second it. And do we have
I'm sorry,
discussion on it?
yes, Chairman Ward,
Senator Altshuler?
you had, you have create and send. I actually had that notation on line 11. So going back to line 10, the Department of Revenue Administration shall annually create and send a school district audit. And then replace all, the word all with school compliance and financial reports to every elected school board official. I also had a notation here that reports should only go to relevant school board members, and I don't know, I don't remember what that was about, or does anyone else recall, or did anyone else make a note of that? You did. I don't know what that meant.
I made
Was it a
note.
subcommittee?
Yeah, I made a note, not to all school districts. So I don't know what.
Yeah.
that meant.
Oh, I know what it was, relevant school board members, so we weren't sharing everybody's annual district audits and compliance and financial reports with every single school district. It's the relevant school district, so we're not sending all of Tilton's stuff to Hampton too, and vice versa. We're sending it just to those relevant towns. Do you recall that? That was that was what we were talking about, yeah. So on line 11, and financial reports to every
Every
relevant
school board.
relevant school board members.
You said relevant?
Relevant. That was it. We also had a notation that this does not need to be postal mail, that it can be delivered digitally. Is it necessary to make that notation in the legislation as an option?
Now, Senator Altshuler, did you find a spot for the create and send?
For the what?
To be under,
The create and send, that line 11? In front of the word send, create and.
not annually send, create and send.
Yeah.
Okay.
And between the word, on line 5, between the word administrator and the department, a line that says electronic communication shall be acceptable.
To insert that sentence,
In line 5,
okay, after administrator.
correct. That's all I have I had DOE, Department of Revenue, and the Municipal Property Division. That was all their notes that I have,
Trevor, did you
that they
get those?
support and wanted those changes.
Senator Altshuler, did you say
sir.
electronic communication shall be acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have all of the changes?
Last line, of verbiage on line
Create
4.
consents, elected relevant school board officials.
Oh, we have something from the DOE here, from Elizabeth Brown.
Brown? Yes.
Yeah, so she has said that she thinks that to change on line 4, the words compliance and financial report, and change it to monitoring and financial report, and then define monitoring would be clarifying.
In that same note, I believe
Do you have that?
I believe that same note has a definition, a recommended definition.
Yeah, she's got a recommended
Monitoring
definition.
report
You want me to just pass this
Take
down?
out compliance
Do you
and
have that?
financial reports and put in monitoring and financial report instead.
Correct. And then monitoring report definition. I could just pass this down if it's,
I've got it right here too.
oh yeah,
So it's
she's got it down there.
Monitoring.
Any formal
A
report
report.
authored by the Department of Education that identifies a compliance concern or deviation from industry standards and recommends the local education agency take corrective action.
So should that sentence go after compliance and financial report?
I think the way you would want to do it for the purposes of this section, compliance report definition means, and then you put in there, then you don't have to repeat the opening of that, but then you say monitoring report definition. So you kind of make a definitions
Okay.
section limited to this subparagraph.
Do you have that, Trevor? Do you have her letter?
I do, yeah.
Right here.
Okay.
So if there's is there a definition section in RSA 21-N?
I
You
looked
check,
over
Ben?
there. I didn't see a definition, like a definition section.
Okay, because that would, if there's no definition section, then you're right, it would go in section 14.
No, actually, we have two definitions, the compliance report
definitions?
definition and
No,
the monitoring
okay.
report coverage.
Okay.
So,
I'm struggling with internet connectivity.
Yes. Oh, you're back.
when you get all of those things in, maybe you could just send us so we can take a look at it. There's a lot of changes in that short little bill.
So do you want to just read it back to us so we could take the vote, or do you want to,
Madam Chair, if I may, this doesn't have a fiscal note, so we could perhaps submit an amendment.
Right, but I just want to be sure that we have all this stuff in the right place. Yeah, do you want to read through it slowly so we can just follow it?
Sure. So on line 4, I have striking compliance and replacing compliance with monitoring. So it'll read, the Department of Education shall annually send all school monitoring and financial reports to every elected school board official, school superintendent, and school business administrator. Electronic communication shall be acceptable.
Oh, hold up.
Relevant.
Relevant has to be in there, yeah,
So I also have that on line 11. So do you
Yeah.
want both places?
in both places.
Sure.
Relevant. So every financial monitoring report doesn't go to every single school board.
And then, like I said, on line 10, the Department of Revenue Administration shall annually create and send all school compliance and financial reports to every relevant elected school board official. And then at the end, for the purposes of this section, add the definitions of, and then the compliance and monitoring report definitions. As sent
So
over.
when we have a line 10
Madam Chair.
or line 11, should that be changed to compliance and financial reports? That's what they want. Okay, monitoring. Should that be monitoring reports instead of
Yes.
compliance report?
Okay.
Madam Chair, there's a member of the public who I believe wants to hand us a piece of paper. I'll leave that to your discretion, but
Do you want to,
Oh,
do you want to come up here and?
yes.
Sometimes I feel we just do writing.
Gonna save you so much.
You've been watching us on the struggle bus this whole time?
Okay.
Thank you.
Or, just read it, yeah. You want to just read? Oh, yeah, just start from the top so we can follow.
There's no suggested changes in line 4 or 5.
Right.
Okay, sure. So we're looking at line 10. And we're changing it to say the Department of Revenue Administration shall annually, I'm sorry, I cannot read this.
Create, did it say create? Create this.
Random, what's this year?
By duly.
You're more welcome.
By July 10, by July 10, not duly. Okay.
If you want to read.
I didn't realize
You're
my
more than
handwriting.
aggravated agree, Julie, July.
Well, it's a D, a J.
You knew what you meant.
Thank you very much for letting me hand
It's in
this
the
up.
margins.
Starting at line 10, the Department of Revenue Administration shall annually, by July 10th, create and send a school district audit compliance report, so strike and financial, to the Department of Education for distribution to every relevant elected school board official, and then the rest. And then strike that last sentence, so that the members get it one time, not from two different agencies.
So striking the last sentence, that's one on 12 and 13.
Correct.
Just strike that.
Yeah.
Now, I think Trevor will be happy to have that.
In the recording.
It says July, by the way. Does that look like a D? I'm sorry. That was in the margins.
Okay. Do you think you have it all?
I have the Department of Revenue, I
Yep.
for sure have. I just want to make sure you're okay with the original changes too.
And you have the Elizabeth Brown things?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And I think that's what we're working with.
So in addition to the Elizabeth Brown changes, we also want Senator Altsheller's point about electronic communication and the relevant school board
Mhm.
officials.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, that's a pretty lengthy committee amendment. Okay,
Go team.
I need the motion on the committee amendment.
I'll make motion ought to pass on the committee amendment. I'll second that.
So we have a vote to pass and second on the committee amendment. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the committee amendments?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0, okay. Now, the bill as amended. We have an ought to pass on the bill as amended,
Second. Did you move, or are you saying, do we
I
have a
said,
motion?
we approved the committee amendment.
Yes.
We have voted on that, and I said the bill as amended.
I'm sorry, I misheard. I thought you were moving it, but I'll move it if you need. I was seconding your movement, your motion, but I will make the motion.
We have, all to pass as amended. You have a second?
Second.
Second with Abbas. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0. You will put it on consent?
Move for consent?
Second.
Okay, put it on consent. All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0. Abbas, do you want to take that out?
Sure.
I'd be happy to do that. right?
It would be an honor, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I think that does it for today.
Okay.
We didn't get all of them done, but we got a lot of them done. So,
Did you ever bring that up? Oh, yeah, right.
okay, nice to know that we have some more to go. Hurry up and have some lunch before you have to go to the next session. That will do in about 20 minutes.
I was,
Did we come
rude.
Did we come out of executive? I'd like to make a motion to come out of executive session. I'll second
Second.
it.
All those in favor of exiting the executive session?
Aye. Second. We don't need a second, right? We're good.
We're good.
We don't need a vote to adjourn, right? Just a motion. We're good.
Might be safer just to do it.
Okay.
Didn't we just already do it?
I second the adjournment.
Yeah, so all in favor?
Aye.